Hey everybody, it's time for Windows Weekly and a special show today. Richard and Paul are both in Seattle for Microsoft's Developers Conference Build, and they will talk, of course, about the keynote, which we streamed live on Monday, but a lot of big announcements. Agentic AI, the theme of the show. We also have Windows News, Xbox News. It's a jam-packed Windows Weekly coming up next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 933, recorded Wednesday, May 21st, 2025, live from Build. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. My friends, there is news from Microsoft. At the Build Conference in beautiful Seattle, Washington, I bring you Paul Thurrott from Thurrott.com, Richard Campbell from Runners Radio. They're sitting side by side.
Yes.
Put your phone down, Paul. We've got a podcast to do. Oh, isn't that?
See, it's not AI this time. Not
No,
AI.
it's real.
It's like my hands all
real,
out, reaching
Paul.
across the screen. It's a real thing.
I have to say, I really enjoyed Monday's keynote. If you haven't seen it, and it is on the Twit Plus feed for club members, not public, but it is on the Twit Plus feed. I should mention, we did the Google keynote yesterday from I/O. We did the Build keynote for Microsoft on Monday. We will be doing the Apple keynote in a few weeks. All of that will only be club members, not because we want to, but because of takedown fears. Apple has threatened us both on YouTube and Twitch. At this point, we decided not to take the chance. So we're doing it privately in the club. If you're not a club member, $7 a month, that's all it takes. You can just pay for the 1 month and get access to all three if you want. But the Twit Plus feed does have the Build keynote, which I thought was really great. Paul and Richard joined me. I was very impressed, but we're going to get to that. But first, a little word of warning. Mm-hmm. If any blood is splattered on our hosts during the show today,
I just want to be clear. I take no stance on the Israel-Palestine thing, but it has.
There's a lot of protesters.
It's inserted itself into our lives here.
It's been remarkable.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit at the keynote, and that turned out to be a Microsoft employee who sent an email to everybody saying bye, and then did it.
Yeah, but there are more stories, I guess, is the way to say it. So even to that event, for example, if you watched that on the live stream, you saw and heard what we heard, which was
just a little disruption in the
background. A bit of a pause on
Sasha
Sasha's part, kept going.
Yeah, I only stumbled a sentence, nothing more.
Yeah,
but I mean, you should probably tell this story though, like what actually happened in that room that day, because it's way more.
So the guy popped up in the middle. And so all the black shirts appear and start converging on him. Mm-hmm. And when they were just about to him, two more people went up the wings.
Oh, this is
they were trying to get on stage.
They were trying to get on stage. And then other people appeared off the side and took those people out.
Yep.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So there's a lot of security.
It is a lot of security.
Day one was like a military zone here. It was like police and tactical gear, like big trucks driving around.
Is it all employees?
No.
Okay.
Because anybody can buy a ticket, right?
Yeah, hundreds.
It's a strange place to choose for a protest like that.
Well, it's here in Seattle. It's Microsoft's hometown.
Microsoft is also accused of supporting Israel with some of its Azure capabilities.
Right.
But Microsoft itself says, no, they're a regular commercial customer.
This is like, you're spreading hate speech on Facebook, and they're like, we're not doing it. They're doing it. We provide the platform, that kind of thing. But so. That day, after I did the keynote coverage from the hotel room, so after that, I wanted to get over to the convention center, which is right next to my hotel, so right around the corner. I walked. I wanted to go to the press room, which I was told was on the third floor, and there were probably 100, 150 maybe protesters outside making a lot of noise. All the military, police stuff going on, kind of like Boston in 2013 or whatever, and could not get in the building. Right. I spent the next 45 minutes walking around that block, trying to get in the back, go through the garage, lots of security, blah, blah, blah. You get inside. I ran into, David Ortno from the .NET team up on maybe the third floor. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking, these two security guards bursted out of a door. And they're like, we got people on the second floor. And
wow,
there's actually been a lot of local protesting occurring, meaning like in a particular session maybe or whatever it is. So I saw this I saw this. I think it was The Verge. It was like protesters have now interrupted build 3 times. I'm like, no, it's closer to 25 or 30 times actually.
A lot more than that.
You just don't really see you just don't see it. So
it's interesting because Google maybe locked it down better at Shoreline, but there were, as far as I could tell, no protests at Google.
Well, they're in their own facility there, right? So they have their own. They can.
Well, they're not. They're at Shoreline, but it wasn't.
I'm sorry.
Open to the public,
right?
Yeah.
Well.
Maybe
in any
that's
event,
the difference.
this is day one was just crazy. I also, I'm not going to.
There was a point where they closed the doors. You couldn't get out of the building.
You literally couldn't get in or out. Like it was crazy.
The protesters were being very aggressive to anyone with a badge on.
Yep.
And so they basically held all the attendees inside while the police cleared the sidewalks.
On day 2, Tuesday, yesterday, I again, head over to the convention center at whatever time, and it was much calmer outside, right? And I'm talking. This is one example of like the stuff that just it's not making the news. No one has seen it, whatever. But I was standing on the corner right in front of the entrance to the convention center, and I'm talking to my wife on the phone, just catching up, and people are coming and going in every direction. And it's like a scene from like a Joker or a Batman movie. Like down the street, it's kind of a little bit of a hill. I could see a woman in a nice suit, like really dressed up, holding 2 big, sets of balloons. I froze there. And like light blue balloons, right? And it's something you would notice because it's unusual. But then you're like, okay, well, people have parties and maybe it's just a work event. Who knows? And so I didn't think about it again. And I concluded this call. I went through security, which is tedious. And I'm walking away and maybe 10 feet away from security, and I hear a commotion behind me, right where I just left. And I turn around, and that woman has pushed past security, let the balloons go. These banners come down that's like Free Palestine or whatever, and they're both setting off alarms. They're like, bah, 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 bah. And so they're floating up into the atrium. It's like 100 feet. And then she ran back out. And I'm like, okay. Wow. It's like, okay. So now there's these alarms going off inside the convention center, but just in that little area. The security guards all run over. They're all looking at it like, yeah, no, we're not going to really get those down there. Like they're like way up there. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. So I turned around and went up the stairs. And then I thought to myself, I swear to God, it might have been 30 feet later. You can see like the convention's just happening. People are coming and going. And if you weren't right there, you didn't even know what happened.
Right.
And because of the way it happened and so quickly, no one, made a video of it or anything. So you don't see it online. But it happened and they disrupted it. And so I was imagining like 5 minutes later, someone would leave a session, go out that entrance, out the exit, and maybe register there's alarms going off at the ceiling, but thinking like, whatever, like, alarms go off if you're in a city, like what is it? But they did it specifically to disrupt in that moment. And that's what's been happening. Like there's been a lot of stuff like that. And,
of course, this is a charged subject in the United States right now, all over the world. And a lot of tech companies are getting a lot of heat because of their participation or involvement with Israel. But I wonder if we're going to see worse from the anti-AI folks in a few years.
It's only a matter of time. This is like a science fiction movie made real, right? Where it's... the people.
There are people who believe really strongly that AI is a plagiarism machine. Yeah. It's the we had somebody on Intelligent Machines last week, Emily Bender, who basically, is a Puritan, like that thou shalt not allow a witch to live. They think AI is witchy.
So this is the part of the plot to Contact, right? The Carl Sagan book and then the movie where these religious people are like, no, you can't go into space and try to find God or whatever it is you're doing. Like you're. So
I think we're going to see some
definitely
serious protests. This is shocking to me that this much is going on.
No, me too.
Today.
Listen, I traveled for work right after 9/11. There was heightened security everywhere. No people on planes. Go to Vegas and whatever. This is worse than that. In the sense that it's more intrusive and in your face, and it's bizarre. Like I've just never experienced this. I've gone, Richard's gone to even more stuff than I have. Mm-hmm. But like I've been to Israel. Like I just have never witnessed anything quite like this. So
these guys were very organized and they were quite aggressive. It's surprising.
So the other thing so just real quick, someone said to me something to the effect of, well, they're against this kind of violence in Palestine. So at least they're not going to be violent. I was like, I don't think that guarantees that. But, the notion that someone would be hypocritical on that note, I don't think it's that much of a stretch.
No. These things, I've been parts of protests in the 60s and 70s against the Vietnam War. And what I learned there was once you're in a mob, once the mob is doing something, you lose all individual will.
Yes.
And mobs will do things that I wouldn't have done.
Just in the moment, because
in the moment as individuals.
It escalates and then
mobs have no conscience or brains. They just are mobs. And it's very scary.
Yeah. So day 2 in that there was a second keynote like Google does, like a developer keynote. And that was also disrupted, by the way. And no one even knew what happened if you weren't in the room, because that time you didn't even hear it happen. So
no, Jay was interrupted. They cut the feed.
Yeah. Oh, they cut the feed.
They actually cut the mics because he was very close to the front and very loud. And
I'm sorry. Okay.
I think there was a moment where they just said, shut the mics off. And so Jay just stopped. And then when they cleared him, then the mic came back on and continued.
So I'm speaking to folks here. Microsoft knew that this was probably going to happen. They were training all of the speakers to, at all costs, just keep talking.
Yeah.
And they were told, listen, if everything goes south, the teleprompter disappears, you're just standing there and there's whatever hundreds of people in front of you. Talk about your day, what you had for breakfast, just keep going. And the idea was, do not give these people a platform. Don't give them what they want, which is to disrupt the normal activities of the show to make their case, right? And I thought Satya did a great job with that, especially because it was like a 1 second
not even. It was literally just a stumble of a word.
And he just kept going, right?
Yeah. And this is like Chicago in 1968. This is, and it reflects the deep divides in this country, and the world these days.
Oh, absolutely. And look,
big tech is taking a lot of the brunt of this, and I don't think it's the end of it. I think there are many issues.
I think this is the beginning of it. Unfortunately, what happens is, when you see this on the news or whatever, that gives other people ideas, and then it's like, this is something we could do. We could do something worse, that kind of thing. So it's
let's not give them too much time.
Okay. But I just, the reason I wanted to highlight this is because
it's not getting covered in the news.
This is incredibly unusual. I mean, unique really for me. I've never really experienced anything quite like this. And especially the Microsoft thing. And, it's like wherever you land on this debate, it kind of doesn't matter. It's just, it has cast kind of a weird shadow over this show. Like it's been very odd.
Yeah, that's not the only shadow on this show.
No, I know. No, but
there's other shadows.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other shadows.
Well, I mean, there's concerns about the future of the show. Although, I talked. So
what are the concerns about the future?
The other shadow of the show is the layoffs last week. It really seems to have hit the Microsoft
of course
hard.
6% layoffs, and mostly developers. It looked like, right?
3%. It was 6,000 people.
So 6,000, 3%. Sorry.
And this is another thing we've talked to folks here about that, obviously. And there were
speakers that were let go that were supposed to be presenting.
At least one Microsoft booth in the show floor area that was not manned because those people were all laid off.
Wow.
And this was it's a weird timing. There are theories about this, but I was talking to a friend from Microsoft who was telling me that the only thing that he'd ever encountered that was worse than this was over 10 years ago, and it sounds like a crazy exaggeration, but he said that everyone on these teams were given emails and they all had different instructions. So they talked amongst themselves and like, what does yours say? It's like, what does yours say? And some of them were brought into a room as I think 100 people or so in a room standing there. Some guy gets up on the stage, reads a script and says, all right, HR will be out in a minute and tell you what your future looks like. And then he left. And it was like, what is happening? But, this time, the weird random nature of it, the weird, seemingly random, the weird, it doesn't matter what your tenure or success rate was or whatever.
It was very random.
It has caused people who maybe never worried about their future to suddenly think, wait a minute, like anything is possible now. And it's that kind of doubt that I think is a huge problem for the morale or whatever of everyone at this company now. It's like we're the most successful company on earth on many measures, and they're being super aggressive.
The timing was not good. They had the quarterly results. They had a great quarter.
Yeah,
they lay off 6,000 people.
Yeah.
Yep. So
and in a way that seemed at once
arbitrary,
symmetrical, like every team was touched, but also arbitrary as to who it was.
Yes, a separate person had told me, he said, look, back in whatever it was, February, they laid off low performers. These people had been warned well in advance. Like the only issue there was that unfortunately some people had actually, I guess, turned things around.
Yeah.
But because it was so late in the cycle, their overall record was still kind of bad. So they were like, but wait, I fixed myself. And they're like, no, you're out, But this one was less, I don't know, like metric based. I'm not sure what to call it.
It was not metric based. It was a riff.
It seemed to be, it was business based, that they were actually looking at costs and specific. No, not even that.
6,000 people in this equation. It's like $2 billion a year. They did $10 billion in buybacks that quarter.
I know.
Like, it's just not enough money to matter.
Right. No, it was a weird, it almost felt like a countrywide warning. This could happen to you.
Yeah, that's what it really feels like.
But that destabilizes.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
I don't
what
understand.
seems to be happening.
That's what I don't understand. There's a lot of, just kind of self-doubt that I've not seen here before, which is bizarre at this time.
I have. It was 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the last time I've seen the company like this.
And by the way, that might be the thing I was just referring to. Might have been 2011. So
2011 was the time where everybody seemed to more. One thing I noticed, because I go to campus regularly, was I was sitting in Red West and watching the parking lot clear out at 5:30.
Yep.
And I go, people used to work here 24 hours a day. They just came and went.
Oh my God. So for Sunday night, I went over to the campus for their little pre-show event. This is the original part of the campus. So it's like buildings 1 through 8 or 9 or whatever it is. It looks like Space City over there. It's completely different.
These are the new buildings.
Yeah, you wouldn't recognize it if you were used to the campus from many years. It looked like a college campus. This thing looks like a Star Wars set. And I had a friend who worked at Microsoft for about 20 years who came over afterwards, and we drove around the campus, and we were both kind of reminiscing, like, this used to be here, this used to be here. We're like, we couldn't figure out where we were at points. We're like, this is completely different. But the other half of that is that there are buildings they started right before the pandemic, and they're just sitting there, empty shells or like girders and like empty pits in the ground. And he was like, Amy Hood's like, yeah, we're not finishing these. Like, we're going to leave these things here. We're not spending money on this. And it makes half of the campus look like a war zone. It's the weirdest juxtaposition of richest company on earth, and they don't have the people to fill these buildings now, not because they don't exist, but because a lot of these people are just working from home. They don't have the, not everyone's coming in.
What's funny is a lot of AI teams were cut.
Everybody was touched.
Everyone.
Yeah.
So
somebody, Paul, is telling me in the Discord that the Python team was cut on their way to the Python convention.
Incredible. So
the timing was stunning. And, I've heard stories of they were in a meeting. A VP appeared in the meeting.
Said, you can wrap this up.
You need to wrap this up.
Yeah. Like,
you need to go see HR right now. And then dropped out of the call.
Incredible.
Wow.
So I was standing on before the event, I was standing there doing something on my phone, and Raphael he lives right across the street. It's fun. He came over with his wife. We were talking for a little while. And as we're talking, I'm looking over this vast space. Like the Microsoft campus is the size of a town. It's like incredible. And it spans over the highway. It's this huge thing. And I literally at one point said, I could see a guy like, a mile away coming up over the top of the, the little hill there. I'm like, you know what this feels like? This is like the beginning of one of those zombie movies where the world is completely empty, and then you see a person in the distance, and suddenly you realize they're running at you, and they're like, "What's going on?" And it's like a zombie, And I was like, "There's no one here." I was like, "This entire Space City thing was completely empty." I mean, there were people in the building I was about to go into, and him and I and his wife, but the whole usually this stuff happening, like people moving around cars and whatever, and I was like, "There's no one here."
Yeah.
It's very, these things don't make sense together. Richest company in the world, empty. Richest company in the world, buildings are never going to be completed. They have a geothermal thing, a structure, this giant, that was described to me as being a hole that goes down to the center of the earth. And I said, you're describing the plot of Stranger Things, and this is really weird. Like, it's just there's something weird going on here. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's very strange.
The lead of Microsoft's CPython team, the core developer, Matt Dretbaum, wrote on LinkedIn, Microsoft's support for the faster CPython project was canceled yesterday. We were all -1 set to attend the Python language summit at PyCon today. And in fact, the notifications came out while we were en route to Pittsburgh.
Oh, boy.
They also laid off a longtime TypeScript developer. It hit languages for some reason, and AI.
But again, I think that speaks to the random nature of it, in the sense that, like Richard said, I think every group was touched by this. Like they were just like, we're taking one here, we're taking one here.
But you almost can't say that it was AI to blame for this, or can you?
No, it doesn't seem like that.
I don't think so. No.
It definitely, and it's not. That's just the thing that's interesting. It's like, it's not the money, it's not any given team, it's not anyone's performance.
It's inexplicable.
The stock price was already up from the phenomenal quarter. The only thing I can point to is it's to keep the workers afraid.
That's not good.
It worked for the Empire and Star Wars for a little while. I mean, it's a very strange strategy to me. Well, this is, when we first talked about this last week, the thing I would have said at the time, I think, is like, generally speaking, with whatever these types of things, you can point to something and say, look, there's a reason here. And you may agree with it or not. It doesn't matter. But this one, it's like, I'm really struggling to understand the point, like what they're trying to achieve, because it just doesn't seem to be rational.
Yeah. And if it was to galvanize the employees, I think it did the opposite, because they seem very demoralized.
Oh my God. Yes. Yep. And like I said,
it's weird to do it right before build, or maybe would it be worse to do it right after build? I don't know.
Don't know the answer to that.
The typical time to do this, it seems, would have been tied to the end of the
Christmas.
Well, yes, I mean that. But I mean, for Microsoft, you often see big changes occur right as their fiscal year ends and starts, right in June, July,
right.
Which is likely still to happen. Right.
That's right. So
in July there will be shuffling, because there always is when the new fiscal rolls out.
I've heard before July, by the way. So, but there's going to be more. I mean, that's one thing I've heard consistently. Like, this is not the end of this, and
which speaks to that fear quotient again.
This is it's a lot like what happened in the gaming industry last year, where it just felt like it was like, what is this going to stop? Like, what point do we have enough people to do the stuff we're trying to do with games? But now it's the company. It's not just games. Anyway, on that happy note.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about Agentic AI.
Actually, you want to take a break just to clear your head? We could do that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go right into it.
Yeah.
All right. I have to say, I really enjoyed the keynote on Monday, especially compared to the keynote on Tuesday, Google's keynote. It was
really?
I'm
fascinated to hear that.
You said, and I think it's true, that it was very developer focused. They wanted to make it more developer focused, and it felt that way.
Mm-hmm. And you
Google
think
showed a lot of stuff.
Well, Google does the thing that Apple does, which is they have the keynote, which is a marketing event.
It's a more public.
They right after it ended, they had a developer keynote, which is what Apple does. So just real quick on that, and I was pre-briefed on a lot of the stuff that Google announced, I thought. But then most of the stuff they announced in that first keynote, I was not pre-briefed on. So I heard about all the developer stuff and a few other things. But as they kept unrolling, like, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, I was like, what is happening? Like, it's like, I thought I had a handle on what they were going to announce. And it went on for 2 hours of, this is stuff we never mentioned to anybody. And if anything, I almost feel like they had too much stuff. Like, it was overwhelming.
That seems very Microsoft-y, to overwhelm a keynote.
Yeah, it was definitely shock and awe. And I think for them, it was a message, because a lot of people still think they're behind in some way. And they were like, in case it's not obvious, we are not behind. So anyway.
I really enjoyed, the thing that stuck out for me was the chemistry demo. They had a Microsoft employee who was a chemist show how they used Agentic AI to pull in all the scientific papers. They were looking for a new compound for cooling.
With no
so
PFAS.
they set the pardon me?
No PFAS, right? Like no
without
forever
PFAS,
chemicals.
without those forever chemicals.
That's right.
So they pulled in all the scientific papers. They gave it the parameters. The AI went out, collected information, then generated some sample molecules, which they thought would fit the bill, then tested in the computer, tested the sample things, came up with a molecule to try. They made it.
Yeah, and they said this should work.
And then they showed dropping an Xbox motherboard in there and playing Forza, and the motherboard stays cool. It was submerged in this newly invented chemical. Yeah. And then he said, well, if it seems like a demo, it's not. We did this.
Right.
And
that's right. He actually started walking away. He said, oh, I'm sorry. By the way, that was real. Like, we just did that right now.
But what they were trying to demonstrate, not so much making new materials, although that was kind of amazing, but how Agentic AI can reach out and collect information for you. And there's two technologies they talked a lot about, MCP and A2A.
Well, yeah, and the other half. No, you're right. I'm sorry. There's a related thing. We were talking before the show, and I was trying to remember. Who would come up with it? Yeah, that's the NL web stuff. But the interesting thing to me about that, and we touched on this briefly, I think last week, is that the big AI companies, so Anthropic, I almost said Apple, just kidding, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, et cetera, are agreeing on these standards, right?
It's to me such a relief because this could easily have been siloed.
If that would have prevented any forward progress, if Google had their own thing and Anthropic, OpenAI, Microsoft, whatever had their own thing, and this would have halted all progress.
It also speaks to they're all vulnerable.
Yep.
Nobody has the confidence to say, "Oh no, we're going to be able to do this end to end ourselves. Let's go." They're all trying to find ways to be successsul.
Apple tried and failed miserably. Yeah. So now they're talking to everybody.
They could still get it right. But last fall, I think it was, Satya Nadella said that AI models were a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was his quote? 1,900 of them in the foundry now?
Over 1,900, yep. Yeah. And but I think the extension of that now is, okay, but that means you're also a commodity, Microsoft, because this is the if everything is AI, nothing is AI argument.
Well, but they're making Azure agnostic, right? In fact,
Azure's always
Sam
been
Altman and Elon Musk on the
Well, we got to get to that later because that to me was very striking. You have Elon Musk is suing Sam Altman and OpenAI over the future of that company.
Mm-hmm.
They're cross-suing him and Grok and whatever it is, and you put your whole company's future was resting on OpenAI's shoulders for a while there, and still kind of is, right? Practically speaking. And you put both of them on, not on stage. They were both video things, but I mean, who are we sending messages to here? That's a crazy.
Yeah, well, they're just.
It's a valid point to give them both airtime.
Is it? Because you just said this, 1,900 models are in the Azure AI Foundry. So now I guess we have two more in their Grok models. Why didn't we have any of those other people on stage?
Why was nobody on for DeepSeek?
But why would you put? Yeah, why would you put them on stage? What are Microsoft developers clamoring for Grok models? I don't think so. I mean, so there was to me, that was very much a message or a series of messages being sent in both directions.
To Sam Altman, from Sam Altman. But I also thought,
really interesting.
If you knew you were going to be protested, that was going to be the lead story. You knew putting Elon on the screen was going to be controversial. It's one way to control your lead story.
Yep. We can do something even stupider, and we will refocus the news nicely.
Yeah.
Yep. Because if you think about it logically, or you think about it just practically, like I said, I don't think anyone was asking for this. I don't think it would have mattered to anyone.
You didn't raise the stock price because Elon had 3 minutes on the screen.
Nope. But there he was, and wow, you're going to call this guy out? I mean, this was a message to the U.S. government in some ways, if you think about it. I mean, which is part of
probably a wise thing to do.
It's part of the strategy. We're racing forward. We don't want anything getting in our way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we've got a couple of billionaires with us.
Mm-hmm.
A smart CEO at this point definitely appeals to Trump and says, hey, here's $1 million for your inaugural committee or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We talked about this yesterday on MacBreak Weekly when Trump was in Saudi Arabia with Jensen Huang and Elon Musk, by the way.
Yeah, which is
he says to Jensen Huang, "I'm glad you're here. Tim Cook's not here."
Wow.
Tim Cook might have other problems if he went to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or whatever.
But this is the point. I mean, he's keeping score.
Yeah, you think?
So if you're a CEO, it's part of your job.
Captain of Revenge is keeping score. I mean, yeah.
It is a little stunning to see how quickly these companies adapt to corruption. But that's what they're doing. They're adapting.
I mean, honestly, I think they formalize corruption. Really, I mean, they've corruption at scale. Is their.
It's so funny. When I worked for years, I worked for iHeart, and we would get training every year on how not to bribe people.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Don't bribe people in other countries, even if we'll help you the business. It's against it used to be against the law in the United States. They've actually eliminated that.
Yeah, sure.
There was this sense of if you're a U.S. business, you're above that. You don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's this sense that, and this is what happens, by the way, this is what happens with corruption.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't take, people are very quick to say, oh, it's not illegal anymore.
Let's go.
Nice.
Right. You see this, but this is business. We talk a lot about this with quarterly earnings that Microsoft, but not uniquely. is disclosing less and less every quarter, almost as if to probe and see how much they can get away with. And what they've discovered is they can get away with everything.
Yeah.
And
even the shareholders aren't challenging them. Like,
that's
you have invested in this company. You do not know how it's actually performing.
Yeah, and you couldn't care less because the thing is soaring, and you're like, you know what? You just keep doing what you're doing. I'm not going to ask any questions.
Keep telling you're making money. You should believe us.
Yep, and that is not a healthy relationship, by the way. But that's our world. What other good news?
Well, back to Agentic AI.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Well, politics is the order of the day, apparently, in Seattle today. Microsoft very much behind this, wants to do it. Apple or Google, the same thing yesterday at Google I/O.
Yep. You can see how these companies line up, right? Everyone needs the support of all the third-party services, et cetera. So that's completely understandable. I think the big divide between Google and Microsoft is that Google has a lot of presence with consumers through really popular services, Gmail, Maps, Photos, et cetera, search. I mean, obviously, whatever. But the whole Google thing, everyone understands that. And Microsoft's got incredible penetration in Fortune 500 especially, but we'll just say commercial business, whatever, government as well, any big organizations. And so the primary push with them from the beginning has been the Microsoft 365 part of it, right? And that all makes sense, right? This is, both these companies are going to do fine. The question is, how do they succeed otherwise? So I think Microsoft has a better infrastructure story, and in the sense that, or even infrastructure history maybe. So all their work with Azure and the cloud has really set the foundation for this stuff. So they're going to get a lot of third-party support. You won't see the little badge, running on Microsoft. It's like designed by Apple in California, but made in China. It's like designed by random company, but hosted on Microsoft. Like, you're not going to see that, but they're going to get a big chunk of that. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, well, they propose using Entra as an agent authentication technology, Microsoft's own authentication technology.
Which makes
that's smart. That's
sense.
good.
Yep. Complete sense. And through Intune, by the way, which is the way that a lot of these smaller companies will do that. This is not the heavy infrastructure of the past. It's this cloud-hosted service that a company of any size could take advantage of. So, yes.
Yeah, and it scales really well. If you've got 5 seats, it works. You've got 5,000, it works.
That's right. So, smart.
So this NL Web you were talking about is designed to make it easier for websites to interact with your agent.
So this
right?
this gets to
so they have kind of a conversation.
So the Microsoft CTO, Kevin Scott, right? Good guy, I guess. Tends to ramble, And there was that moment.
He said himself, "I'm an introvert. I hate doing this. Once a year, I have to."
Yeah,
that was true a couple of years ago. I'm not sure about that anymore. But we get it. You're an introvert. We're all introverts. But I would have interrupted him if I was on stage, like I said during the live coverage, which was like, dude, I got this. Like there are 2 things that NL Web does that are super important. One is it allows you as the operator of a website to give your users a natural language way to interact with your site, right? So I have a horrible site search kind of a problem. The ability to use this interface, like if you plug this stuff into like whatever website you have, and your own users can do that. So maybe you have like a login system of your own and you have paid users or whatever it is, that will work for you. But the other half of it is the interoperability with AI agents out on the web. And that's going to be the divide. I think a lot of sites are definitely going to want to do the first half of it, and then it's going to depend on the second half. But Leo, I think before the show you would ask whether any website owner or whatever would want to kind of opt out of this or not use this system. And the answer in the end is probably no, because you are going to get locked out of the world if you do that. Like, this might become the way that most people interact with websites. We have this kind of very standard thing with a web browser and we type in a URL and we do it, but like that might be changing. And so this, they keep comparing it to HTML, CSS, like this kind of just accepted standard. It's the way we do things. It works,
and they can do it against your will. Like the show we did on Playwright MCP, where that's a web testing tool that you can use a prompt to go and strip anything you want out of a website. Yeah.
So this is a way for you to let you to open up your site to be stripped. It's but not. I mean,
accept you're going to be stripped.
It's just you can do it against your will. You can join in. So
you have a choice, sort of.
So this is where I talked to Mary Jo at length length yesterday on the phone, and she asked me this. She has a way of getting to a very insightful question, which is kind of a non-technical person. I was surprised by, but she said, I don't know if you know. She says this is going to come out of the blue, maybe, but do you have any? I thought I saw something where OpenAI had invented this technology, but you don't see anything about that. Like Microsoft's we invented it, and I was like, Mary Jo, I was literally just looking into this exact thing. You're right. OpenAI, if you look it up, has announced this last year sometime, or even earlier. And what I found out was that this was actually invented by DeepMind at Google. And there were 3 individuals. I don't know if it's a patent or whatever, their names are on it or something like that. But whatever the situation is, one of those guys went to OpenAI. No, 2 of those guys went to OpenAI. One went to Microsoft. And OpenAI did announce this some time ago, and Microsoft has now announced it like it's new, and we're doing it. And this is another one of those things where I think there's multiple threads going on here. But I think the big thing here is that this is going to be an interoperability standard that all of these companies are going to agree to use, and whatever. I think that if OpenAI, given the current climate, had come out with it, other AIs might have said, "Yeah, we're not doing that." And that Microsoft doing it makes it a little more palatable, maybe. But also, for this thing, to actually work, it can't be a fly-by-night kind of. Not that they're they're the most well-funded fly-by-night in all history, I guess. But I think there's an interesting story there about that. And I as a person who does have a website, I look at this and I'm like, no, this makes sense. I'm definitely going to do this. The question is whether I do the second half of it. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll see how it develops. But I do think this is going to be a big deal. I think this is as big of a deal as
this is
the
like the
MCP
Web 2.0.
stuff.
This is the mashup, right? Yep. Now it's suddenly mashup with prompts.
We're finally getting Hailstorm and the Microsoft thing from 30 years ago or 20 years ago.
25.
Anyway, there's a lot going on, basically.
Okay.
Weirdly exciting and dark at the same time.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Well, I think it's great. And I guess this is what happens. It happened on the net too, when it's a nascent technology.
Right.
And no one is as you said, no one owns it. Everybody cooperates.
Yeah.
Until such time.
Yes, exactly.
Unless somebody can dominate.
So,
but it's just the sense that nobody feels like they can dominate. I think it's good news.
And we do have that history of the web
us,
as a backdrop. This is super simplistic, but this site works best on Internet Explorer, or this site works best on SDK. We can't do that anymore. Yeah. This site has to just work everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Well, in fact, you probably won't be using a browser in this agentic world. You'll have your agent contact their agent and set a date.
Keep them busy. So I mean, right. And
the demo they did reminded me. I mentioned this on our keynote of the Knowledge Navigator video that Apple did, I think in the 80s, where a professor
John
comes
Scully
in and he's talking to his tablet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was John Scully era. Yep. He's talking to his tablet, and the tablet's an agent saying, "Your mother called," and he says, "Get this professor online, show me the," and they did a demo that was very similar to that. And I thought we are actually getting close to this kind of agentic 100%. World.
The thing is, the transitions are never clean breaks, right? And so you were like, we're not going to be using web browsers. And probably in the future that's true. But in the interim,
for a long time we'll be using
there'll be some class of users that are older people maybe that are used to this now. This is the way we interact. So, Google and Microsoft both are putting all these agentic and AI features into their browsers. You're going to see websites that do it. Maybe your primary interface with the world is whatever. I can just make something up like Gmail. And Gmail, through the plug and play stuff on the back end with MCP and whatever else, will, through Gmail, offer you the ability to do this thing, which is basically agentic background tasks that are multi-agent. And you don't really think about, you don't care. Why would you care? As your user, it's like doing whatever it's doing on the back end, but you might actually launch that thing from what you think of as a website, right? Right. And maybe if you're a Google person, you're doing it through Chrome, and that's how you view the world. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you could do it, through a low-code thing in Windows. You could do it through an application like a native app on whatever platform. You could do it from wherever. It's going to be everywhere. That's kind of the point. It's going to be very pervasive.
Really, I'm excited about this. I'm not one of those people who will be marching out front saying, "No AI."
Unless you wake up tomorrow and someone has created twit2.tv and it's all AI based and it sounds and looks exactly like all of us, and then maybe you will. I mean,
Google. One of the things Google announced yesterday is they've made an app for Notebook LM,
right,
for both iOS and Android. And of course, I had played with it and I had given it like 9 transcripts of Security Now, and I said make a podcast, and it sounded just like Security Now, except it was this kind of nice guy and gal talking about the same subjects.
The best demo, in a way, that Google, I don't think they showed us on stage, but you can get Notebook LM and use it to get a summary of all the stuff that they announced at Google I/O, which, like I said, honestly makes sense because there were 1 million announcements. And so it's just a podcast that summarizes their own show in their own app
using the tools they announced.
Yeah, it's like,
I'm a little concerned.
Genius.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It's very Inception-y.
Yeah, exactly.
A little concerned.
There's a guy, I guess he works at Microsoft now. I'm embarrassed. I wasn't 100% sure I knew this, but Oren Thomas, who came up like I did writing, I wrote for the same magazine and whatever.
He's got almost as many books as you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he might
have more.
Yeah. He's very prolific. He's a great guy, smart, but he did something like this as well. And I haven't seen it yet, but not the main show floor on the other side. There's a booth where he has like it's like an agentic projection, and he's trained it on his voice and his inflections and all this stuff. And then he uses like the whatever tool he's like, here's the story, but I'll summarize it, make the points, turn it into a script, feeds it into the thing, and like it basically produces a podcast that's a video of him talking, but it's not him, and he's like, it's like,
right.
This is
it's just a matter of time before I am not here.
That's what I'm saying. Like, look, as far as you people know, we're sitting here together, and the truth is, Richard and I are not even human beings. We've never met.
We're too sloppy for.
Yeah. Well, that's how you know it's good.
Real.
You know.
Well, I honestly think that's what it'll end up being. That podcast won't be for information. Podcasts will be for companionship, and you don't want to. Contrary to what Mark Zuckerberg says, you want your friends to be real people.
Well, you don't know my friends.
I hope.
No. You definitely don't want it to be me. I can tell you that. Like, some like fake version of me. Like,
no, not a fake. We want the real Paul.
Guy's really kind of a downer.
And the real Richard. And the real whiskey. None of this fake whiskey. We want the real deal. Hey, we got whiskey coming up, back of the book, too. Lots more. We didn't even cover all the new AI stuff, so there's a lot more to come. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell are in Seattle, along with 1 million protesters for Microsoft Build. And we will have more. I should mention that all the cheers you hear in the background, that's not protests, right?
No.
That's just people,
well, unless they're protesting GitHub, Leo. It seems...
Who would protest GitHub, the best thing ever?
No, they're doing a giveaway, and so I think those cheers are each time somebody gets
they're getting like
an Octocat or something.
Yeah, a GitHub tchotchke of some kind.
Yeah. Oh, so you're near the GitHub.
Yeah, you can see the little, what do you call it?
Octocat.
Octocat. So
I love the Octocat.
The Octocat is like the
mascot.
the eyes that are like, a Hello Kitty or something, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, more to come in just a bit. We're glad you're here, all you winners and dozers. It's nice to see you. Our show today brought to you by Spaceship. I got a question for you. Why... I do this. We all assume that simple and affordable means, well, that's kind of basic. It's only for beginners, right? Well, I got to say, tech professionals want to save time and money too, right? Simple and affordable is for everybody. That's the idea behind Spaceship, the pioneering domain and web platform that takes the pain out of choosing, purchasing, and managing domain names and web products. I have never seen anything so slick, so easy to use, so cool. And they've got all sorts of stuff, not just domains at below market prices. They've got shared hosting, virtual machines. You can get your business email there too. So it's not just below market prices for domain registrations and renewals, which is, by the way, a good reason to move your domains there. Spaceship has some pretty fresh ways to deliver simplicity. For instance, there's Unbox. That makes it easy to connect Spaceship products to your domain, configuring it all in just a few steps. And if configuring DNS by hand is a little intimidating or just a pain in the butt, you'll love to know about Alf. Alf, your very own AI. I don't think he's an alien. He's an AI assistant for making life easy, from domain transfers to updating DNS records. Alf loves the stuff you probably don't, and Alf will do it for you. I like it also, the Spaceship, they're new. And so they're trying stuff. And that means they've got a great roadmap on their website so you can explore, suggest, and vote on new features and products. And they already have started implementing some of those things. They've got a new messaging product that is super cool. So customers and the tech community, you get what you really need at below market prices. It's a win-win all around. Visit spaceship.com/twit to discover exclusive deals on domains and more. That's spaceship.com/twit. Very cool. Highly recommended. Microsoft 365 Copilot. Anything new there?
Everything is new. I don't even know where to start. So obviously the multi-agent, I like that they're finally using orchestration again. They're just talking about that. I guess they were waiting for agents and multi-agents. We mentioned the Enter ID integration, all that stuff, NL Web, et cetera. Most of the Microsoft 365 Copilot stuff we knew about already, but now it's rolling out. So now this is that Wave 2 thing they announced back in April, tied to that Microsoft 50th anniversary, right? So this is all if there's an AI feature that's out in the world from some other AI, Microsoft has it too. So Microsoft has Copilot notebooks, which are basically the notebook LM type stuff. And and the podcast, but Copilot podcasts, et cetera, pages where you can go in and interact with others and what do they say? Ideate and, create and all that stuff. Copilot everywhere, blah, 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 Agent Store, there's all this stuff. I can't even keep track now of what's actually new here versus what was announced, just before the show or a month or so before the show. But on the developer end, GitHub Copilot obviously integrated into, or can be integrated through an extension right now through Visual Studio Code and also Visual Studio proper and all the advances there. But they announced at this show that they're open sourcing GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. And what that means is the way Visual Studio Code to me is the way every application on Earth should be, especially something like a web browser where I feel like it should be this basic shell. And then you get maybe you get a little menu where you're like, I want this feature, I want this.
Extensions.
Yeah, through extensions, literally through extensions.
There's a philosophical thing here too, right? That VS Code is very roll your own, where Visual Studio comes with everything.
It is Battleship.
It's the IDE, right? Yep. It's integrated environment.
But and this is, I think, going to be controversial. So what this means is that instead of you deciding that you want GitHub Copilot and adding that extension, it will just be integrated into the source for Visual Studio Code, thus will be part of the product. Now,
it's protectionist.
Yep, because now I think it has to do with Cursor and all these other things are going to, because Visual Studio Code is an open ecosystem, basically. Gemini could come in with their own extension. OpenAI could come in with their own extension. And you can do the pair thing where you have like a side-by-side interface or whatever, but...
I don't know why I already open Cursor and Visual Studio Code.
I know.
Right? I already do that.
That's right.
Right? Like, why do you think I'm going to stop?
Yep. Well, because maybe VS Code is now just part of it. I think this is the theory.
Yeah. But, it's never stopped using Visual Studio Code, but the fact that there's an extension are built in doesn't going to stop me using other AI tools.
No, that's right. Yeah, right. 100%. But you're right. This is absolutely why they're doing it. So there are a lot. Well, Cursor is an example. Cursor is built using Visual Studio Code. It is Visual Studio Code slightly modified, right?
Yeah.
So
it's Electron.
Yeah, and you might see, there'll be some person, some company, whatever, will make a version of code that will be GitHub Copilot less. This is going to happen.
It could fork, right? It's open source. I'm really surprised that there's not more forking going on in that sense. Lots of things do get forked, but they're not like fork and actively developed instead of shown as an alternative.
Yeah. But this generation doesn't fork as much.
Less forking going on.
The kids these days.
A lot of forking going
on. You forking kids. I don't know. We'll see how that progresses. But I saw that and I was like, that's cool. Why? So why? We know why.
I think we've come to why.
I think we know why. Yeah.
And it's interesting. Again, I'm surprised about the amount of insecurity in this space. Yeah, right? That people, they're all afraid of trying to make advantages.
It's such big news. It's such big news when Microsoft embraces open source to any level. So they do this visual code thing. It's an astonishing success story outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, right? Linux users, open source users, everyone's like,
everybody loves visual.
We want to hate this company, but we love this thing. This
tool's great.
And then they do something like this, and you're like, well, this is kind of why they hate you. And we'll see. But you're right. Someone who feels strongly about using Gemini or OpenAI or whatever it is,
they're going to.
They will keep using it.
It's all free, except for the tokens.
But I think this is, and that's what's neat about it. I use GitHub Copilot pretty regularly. I've never run into a limit. I don't pay for it. It's kind of amazing. So we'll see. They're also bringing GitHub Copilot agent mode to other IDEs, third-party IDEs like JetBrains, Eclipse, Xcode, the Apple thing. That's fascinating. So they're kind of hitting it on both ends, right? So in the same sense that anyone could use whatever AI with their editor, they're going to say, well, you could use our AI with your editor, that kind of thing.
At the same time saying, no, our editor has ours built in no matter what.
That's right.
Right. So they it's a little hypocritical. It is going out and putting on everybody else's editor, but in your editor, no Copilot's there. It's built into the code.
I just take exception to one part of that. It's not a little hypocritical. It's just straight up hypocritical. But no, you're right. But it makes sense.
Okay.
The other, So when you think about GitHub Copilot or any of these AIs, like in the types of uses that they might have, or what you might use them for, I've used them in very basic ways. Pointed at a method and say, "Could you make this more efficient? Could you find bugs? Whatever it is."
Why does my code suck?
Right. Well, that's a lengthy explanation. I've gotten very lengthy explanations to that, by the way. A little hurtful.
Yeah.
But AI at its heart, I think the best. At a very high level, it's like you can do it. You can use it for busy work that saves you time. And I think one of the neat things that they're pivoting on right now is this kind of app modernization thing, specifically for .NET and Java for now. Although I think it's going to just go to everything where you have this code base. It is whatever it is, and it's like, okay, so you do a code assessment. We already do that. Do the code rewriting. Where you make it more efficient, find bugs, etc. Excellent. But now upgrade it to, let's say, like the latest version of .NET, or maybe it's a native Windows app and you're like, I want it to have the Windows 11 UI or whatever it is. And it's like, this stuff is actually very hard, or can be, or time consuming. And it's like, just set this thing up to go and do this in the background. It will come back later, give you a new, like a forked, to use that term again, repository with all of its changes, documentation, explain exactly what it did. And then you can commit or agree to the commits as you go through it and say, yep, this one, yep, no, not this one. And this is an excellent use of AI, right? In the sense that developer tools, developer processes, et cetera, have emerged as the early winner for like AI use cases. This is a little more specific. Like this is, I really like this because I don't do a lot of software development, but when I do it, it's like this kind of thing. And let me tell you, it's a nightmare.
Well, and also that's what a lot of people are doing. Right. It is super. You don't work on the same code base every day. You have to drop into a code base and make some changes. And you're really hoping you're going to be done that day.
Exactly. Or God help you, it wasn't even code you wrote, right? It's something that's been at the company.
And let's face it, if you did write that code, it was a month ago. Yep, it's not code you wrote.
You're like, I cannot believe I wrote this. Yeah, I don't even know what's happening here. You're like, yeah, exactly.
So no code is code you wrote.
That's right. That's right. Sadly, that's true. What do you mean? I Stack Overflow wrote it. What's the problem? The point is, no, I don't. But anyway, that stuff to me is fantastic. So I feel like we've been talking for a long time and we've oddly glossed over a lot of the stuff from Build so far, but it's just so dense and so much. I think the way to handle this maybe is that a lot of this are things that as they start actually happening, we're going to keep coming back to this stuff, right? So I guess we could shift to the Windows stuff from Build specifically, right?
Because Windows, there's not a lot of conversation about .NET at Build, even though it's a developer show.
Right.
But there is a lot of conversation about Windows.
Which is fascinating.
Which is fascinating because Windows hasn't been talked about for ages.
I know.
But it sure was this week.
The reason we have this notion of a build bingo card is that when Windows was the center of the universe, it was always like, well, what's going to be the most important thing?
Windows.
And then we saw over time that Windows was getting edged off the board.
Yeah.
And we've had years where Windows was not even a thing.
Yeah. Once Azure was the focus, the conversation on Windows went away.
But now it's coming back because Windows is the client that Microsoft has that has 1 billion users.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked maybe too much about all of the changes that they made to Copilot. We've run version 17 of the app or something. They moved the UI like 100 times. Like it's just been like kind of a chaotic mess. But we're starting to see things that I think are actually very useful. You see little glimpses of it in things like text rewriting capabilities in Notepad or image generation capabilities in Paint or whatever it might be. But they're starting to bring these things out to kind of a system level. And we're going to touch on this all over the place. There's just a bunch of it. But in kind of a speed dating sense, big changes to the Microsoft Store where they're improving support for Win32, meaning desktop apps. They're not going to charge developers fees. So if you have a desktop app that you want to put in the store but haven't because you're like, I really don't want to give Microsoft a portion of the whatever, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's over. There's no fees. Notion is in the Microsoft Store now, right? For the first time, for example.
So they're doing the opposite of Apple.
Yes,
and again,
they are.
It's the Microsoft Store.
They're doing literally the opposite of Apple. That's exactly right. There's been this story for the past couple of years about Microsoft trying to make Windows the best place for developers, right? You see that in a lot of things. You see that in the Windows subsystem for Linux, right? Which is now probably 10 years old, right? Now it's open source. And so why would you open source this thing? What's the difference? And I think the difference is when it first came out, there were 3 to 5 or whatever number of distributions you could put in there. The addition of new distributions has been very slow. Although oddly this year, I think we saw it was Fedora most recently, and I want to say maybe Arch Linux. I don't remember,
something
but
like that,
I believe that what this is about is just lowering the barrier for you have some random distribution.
Yeah, you want to put your distro and go for it.
Like, just make it super.
Why does anybody care?
Yep. What's the difference?
Use what you want to use.
Well, we forget this, but like the first version of WSL was this kind of static thing that was part of the operating system and not really easily updatable. And now it's turned into more of an open platform that's separated from the operating system so that they can update it whenever they want through the store, et cetera. It's much easier to install and maintain and update.
Well, and what's happened over the years now is that both Windows and WSL have evolved and put hooks to each other.
That's right. But separately.
Yeah, right? Whatever Linux you put in there, it does have access to the file system and so forth.
Which is amazing, right? And they added support for GUI apps, remember, at some point. But they've just done what they can to make this, friendly for developers. So that's big. Maybe that might be the biggest one. But last year they talked about something called the Windows Copilot runtime, which I jokingly said was not a runtime, but less jokingly never actually appeared. So that was May last year. February of this year, they released the first preview of this in an experimental channel or experimental part of the beta or preview channel, whatever it was, of the Windows App SDK. By the way, it works fine. Like, it's really good. It's for local AIs. No, it works great. Like, it actually works great, but it took them forever. So that's going away. And then now they've renamed it to the Windows AI Foundry, right, to have it link up with the Azure AI Foundry.
Right.
Azure AI Foundry supplies, like you said, over 1,900 models, mostly in the cloud, but also local. So if you have a computer with a GPU or a NPU, especially, not especially, but also an NPU. Copilot Plus. You can do that. And so the Windows AI Foundry is the local version of that. So it's specifically for the local, small language models. And it's exactly what you think it is. But it's hard to remember this stuff. But 2 years ago, maybe they introduced this notion of Dev Home, which they just deprecated, and now you're seeing the features of this thing appear elsewhere in Windows, right? And I think there's it's weird to see this happen in the developer space. It's one thing to move a Copilot icon around the UI, but you announce APIs, you take forever to ship them. There's all kind of reasons why that happened, but doesn't matter now. They ship finally, and you're like, okay, actually, this is pretty good. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing this anymore. And you're like, okay, what's happening? It's a little, it feels a little rushed, but, MCP integration in Windows 11 app
Which
actions.
means being able to write prompts to control things in Windows 11, right? Like, that's amazing.
Yep, smart. 1 year ago, the big news was recall and the Copilot Plus PCs. And you flash forward several months. They didn't ship it for a long time. It was only in preview until 2 seconds ago. But the thing that emerged last year, the far more interesting thing, was this click to do feature, which is a terrible name, typical Microsoft name, but the idea that you can interact with anything that you see on screen, and there'll be smart actions on the back end based on the type of content you see in front of you. So if it's text, you'll have text actions, which will be things like summarize or whatever, rewrite in Notepad to begin with. If it's an image, you can do things with Paint or photos. And they said pretty early on, they're like, we're gonna open this thing up, but we're gonna bring in other apps, and they're announcing this. So they have an App Actions API. If you're running Windows 11, I think in stable, but if not, it's about to be in stable. If you go into where I'm looking at my computer now, if you go into apps, you'll see a actions page, and right now it's just Paint and photos. And they will have, it's not there now, but you'll be able to go in and select not just which apps can supply those actions, but which actions they can supply. And then apps can themselves programmatically add themselves to this list. So that's going to expand pretty dramatically. They've mentioned some third-party companies that have already started adopting this, like Zoom is one, for example, Todoist, Raycast, et cetera. So you're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff. We talked about VBS enclaves in the sense of, recall, right, and Copilot Plus PCs. This is that secure storage on disk that helps, with encryption and protect sensitive information, keep it on the device. They're opening that up to third parties, so you'll be able to write apps of your own that will have their own VBS enclave on disk. And
VBS is not Visual Basic Script.
No, it's not. Sorry,
it's virtual based security.
That's right. Yeah,
virtualization based security.
Yeah, that's right.
VB script. Oh my God.
I mentioned the Dev Home thing. So Dev Home's going away, and one of the big components of that, one of those things I was looking at because I was like, this is important for the future, was it would use Winget in the background to set up not just the apps that you install, but the configuration for those apps, which is the piece that's missing from Winget natively, right? So I bulk install apps, but I also want them to be configured to my specifications. And so in Dev Home, they had this system that was called desired state configuration, where it was a YAML file, which is another type of XML, where you would specify in that file the configuration of each of the apps that you're installing. That has now become part of Winget, right? Because Dev Home is going away. And that makes sense to me. So I feel like Winget's been amazing ever since they announced it, honestly. Yeah. But I feel like it's finally getting to where I want it, because it's nice to bulk install things, but you also want to bulk configure them. Yeah. Not really possible right now.
Well, and now with PowerShell 7.5, which is this week's run as, we get DSC3,
right,
which interacts with all that, and it's also cross-platform, and is about maintaining a state configuration.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that to me is fantastic. And there's other stuff. There's the Power Toys.
The list goes on.
It just goes on, right? So whatever. There's a whole thing going on there. That's all. That's amazing, right? So that's good stuff. What else from a developer perspective? Blah blah blah. I don't know. I don't know where to go with this stuff. Microsoft announced there were 50 million Visual Studio users now. This is across big Visual Studio and Code. Yeah,
it's funny that they mix those two together. They got nothing to do with each other.
But listen to these.
Mostly, it's hiding how many Visual Studio users there is.
I know. Big Visual Studio. The first time I ever visited Microsoft campus was for what became Visual Studio. It was codenamed Boston. Oddly, it was a way to bring the visual tools from Visual Basic and the awesome back-end stuff from Visual C++ and kind of merge those things together. It took a couple of versions, but obviously they got it there. It's pretty amazing.
They only really got there once they got to .NET, right? The two versions that predated .NET were just holding all the other IDEs.
Yeah, so this was like the progression of Office. So Office at one point was a bundle, and then it became an integrated suite. And at some point you have the same back end for all the stuff. So Visual Basic had, I think it was named Vegas at the time. And Visual
C++
Studio
had its own.
Exactly.
The Visual Studio was InterDev and Java. That's all it was. So that's because of Anders.
Right. Yeah,
Anders Harlesby did that.
Yeah, I saw him briefly yesterday.
He's here.
Right? Yeah. There are 25,000 extensions for Visual Studio in the Visual Studio marketplace. There are over 100,000 for code.
Yeah.
That's how popular
it's the difference
it is.
between open source and closed source, right?
Yep.
Right there.
Yep.
And it is 30 years of Visual Studio.
And 10, I think, for code.
Yeah. Not even, just barely 10.
Yeah.
Like that's you ever wanted better proof of the difference? There's the difference.
That's incredible.
Well, plus the extension model for Visual Studio has changed 5 times in 25 years or 30 years.
Yeah. I'm sure they got it right this time.
Well, yeah. And that's one of the reasons Visual Studio Code has the advantage, because they kind of took the right one that the studio learned on the back of, right?
If you want to know, aside from just the sheer bulk of it, if you want to, like, to me, the place where the oldness, if you will, of Visual Studio and the newness of code expresses itself the best is in the GitHub integration.
Yeah.
I find it to be perplexing in Visual Studio and very natural and normal in Visual Studio.
I'm afraid the guys who built the extension weren't GitHub users, right?
Yeah. Right. It absolutely felt like that.
Yeah.
Yep. So, whatever. Let me mention this thing because I thought this is kind of small news in the scheme of things, but there were 2 big announcements related to native code apps on Windows,
right?
Which is crazy, but okay. So one of them is the Windows App SDK, which, if you think back, is we're going to fix UWP finally, right? And so UWP, a problem with that was that each version of UWP was tied to a specific version of Windows 10
in the Windows 10 days, yeah.
And that thing started out meaning there was a major new version of Windows twice every single year.
Yep.
So
IT people were sad.
It was a big problem, but from an app developer perspective, it's particularly a problem because maybe you introduce new controls, new capabilities, whatever it is. You have to be on that version of newer. No,
I love the position that Microsoft put it in, where devs are saying, "Hey, we can't roll the new version until you update Windows," and it's like the IT people going,
"Guys, what are you doing?" Like it's
we're not doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So there are actually many improvements in the Windows App SDK compared to UWP. It's desktop technology, etc.
Well, the big thing is that when UI3 left the Windows integration, it's an SDK now.
Right.
That's what changed it.
Yeah. So if you want to create a modern Windows app for whatever reason, you get UI3, you get all the APIs. It's any supported version of Windows. So you don't have to worry about the versioning stuff. It's not tied to a version of Windows. Very smart. But the Windows App SDK is still kind of an odd duck, or however you want to say that. And there are these individual features that are not, it's the same problem as before, but they're tied to versions of the Windows App SDK. And so someone, as a developer, you might say, well, hold on a second. I have this app and I'm using some version of some feature. I have to almost make something up here, but it doesn't matter, whatever it is. And now you've revved it and now you're moving on and you've added other things, but I want to stick with that thing. And so they're doing further granularity. I'm not sure how to say this, but they're starting, I don't know, probably in version 1.8, whatever comes out this year. They're going to allow you as the developer to install individual components of the Windows App SDK. And now you don't have to worry about the versioning of the Windows App SDK the same way that you don't have, So to me, like most people probably listening to that, like, I don't even understand what you're talking about, which fair enough. But it's honestly kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
The other thing tied to that is React Native. So specifically React Native for Windows, whatever the name of it is. So is obviously based on React Native itself. That technology was they just redid the architecture of React and the renderer in a major new version, which they literally call the new architecture, like capital N, capital A.
Nice.
And now that is the default on React Native for Windows, and major performance improvements. But the big thing here is like async access to and from native code and JavaScript, type safety between JavaScript and native code, new native renderer, meaning when UI3. This is huge. So if you are coming at the world from the JavaScript web app space and want, as part of what you're doing, to get an app on Windows, this is humongous. Like this is something I'm actually going to start looking into now. So I thought this was really interesting. So this is my little my little area where I'm like, this is what interests me the most, and it probably is going to get lost in all the noise here at Build. But to me, it's a big deal. I was originally had an AI section in the notes, and then I realized
and you rolled it in.
I think it's the whole show.
So Leo, I don't know. Do you have a Windows thing happening where you are? Do you have Windows? Like, are you able to run? Like, do you have Windows 11 somewhere that you can put on the screen.
Yeah, it's running right now. Yeah.
So one of the things they announced there, which I just thought was really fun, I think this might have been the night before Kevin Scott did this. You can you upload a photo to Copilot using the app in Windows, right? And now you can tell it to make it look like Minecraft. And
I like that.
You should try this. It's fantastic. Like,
all right. Okay.
I have this great picture that we took at an Ignite right before the pandemic, and I had it. I'm trying to find it here. Now I can't show it to you, but I can show Richard at least. This is the Minecraft version of that. So that's Mary Jo. Mm-hmm. That's me. That's Gary. But
hilarious.
It's awesome.
So you just take.
So let me upload an image first.
Yeah, like find an image for like people if you can, or something where you can recognize what it's doing. But you can, in the same way that like OpenAI had that, was copying the anime style from a famous animator. Microsoft owns Minecraft, so this is perfectly acceptable. So you can have it Minecraft-ize.
So that was the big thing with OpenAI a little while ago. Everybody was doing Studio Ghibli, right? So it makes sense, or action figures.
Yeah. So you should just look at it. Yeah, whenever you can get that up, it's a cool.
I am just trying to find a suitable picture first.
Yeah. It's cool. It's a cool thing. It looks really cool. Like, it kind of makes me want.
It has to be a 10 megabyte file. Okay, now I have to find something small.
I might do my avatar over, so it's like a Minecraft.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
You really should screenshot the two of us and.
Yeah, there you go.
We could be.
If I had a way to do that. I'm sure I do. Let's think. Oh, you're on a Mac, hey? Okay, so this should just.
I believe it's Command Alt 3 F3.
Yeah, something like that. I got it. Okay, now. All right, you don't have to focus.
Yeah, no, we'll come back to this, but it's a really cool. It's a really cool. It's a stupid thing, but I think it's fun.
That's great. Yeah.
And
nobody else can do that because they don't have the intellectual property, right?
I don't know. You say that, but making an 8-bit version of anything is actually kind of a thing. And I guess
you're right.
It's basically what we do with the run-as headshots, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, you do a great job.
We just low-res them and go grayscale.
Yep.
Yeah.
It takes away the axe murderer effect of headshots.
Exactly.
That's always what drove me crazy.
Exactly.
Websites,
the caption of that photo is always, "You've killed again, haven't you?"
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Very wise.
So Google, part of the 1,100 things they announced this week is obviously bringing more Gemini Nano features to Chrome and other Chrome AI features. So Microsoft's doing the same thing on the Edge side. I mean, we've had an integrated version of Copilot since day one with the sidebar, et cetera, et cetera. So language translation and PDFs, new developer features. Google's doing that exact same thing. The ability to use your paid subscription, whether it's consumer or business, in the panel, and then summarize Word, Excel, whatever PowerPoint documents right from the sidebar, which would be something you could do, either something you upload or just you're viewing it side by side, which is amazing. Copilot Chat's going to get all the agents, blah blah, all the stuff. Like, it's just like all the stuff, as you would expect. All right, so I think that's.
Should we take a break and?
Just
looking at our time and going, we got
trying to
75
trying to
minutes
Minecraft us and do a show at the same time. It's not easy, but I have the shot. I will now attempt to Minecraft. Actually, I promise it's on a computer here, and I have to move it to a computer here. And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, before we do all that, maybe I should give a call to US Cloud, the number one Microsoft Unified Support replacement, and our sponsor. We've been talking for a few months now. You probably know. The name should ring a bell about US Cloud. They are the global leader in third-party Microsoft support for enterprises. They now support 50 of the Fortune 500. But I think you're probably saying to yourself, okay, fine, but why should I switch to US Cloud? Well, switching to US Cloud could save your business 30 to 50% over Microsoft Unified and Premier support. And now I hear you say, well, that's good. It's going to save me 50%, but it's got to be as good. As good. How about if it's better? It's twice as fast time to resolution versus Microsoft on average. Okay. That's pretty good, right? Plus the best engineers in the business with an average of 16 years of Microsoft support with break fix. And I think so you're getting better, smarter people, faster time to resolution, half the price. Here's one more thing. Something I don't think Microsoft's anxious to tell you. How to save money on Azure? US Cloud is excited to tell you about a new offering, their Azure Cost Optimization Service. I mean, let's be frank. When was the last time you evaluated your Azure usage? This creeps up on you, right? If it's been a while, you probably have some Azure sprawl, if you will, a little spend creep going on. But good news, saving on Azure is easier than you think with US Cloud. They're offering an 8-week Azure engagement. It's powered by VBox that identifies key opportunities to reduce costs across your entire Azure environment. It knows all, it sees all. And that's when the expert guidance from these great engineers at US Cloud comes in. Senior engineers, an average of over 16 years with Microsoft products. They'll help you figure out what you need and what you don't need. But at the end of the 8 weeks, what you're going to get, the most valuable part, is this interactive dashboard that's going to, it hasn't done anything yet, but it's going to identify rebuild and downscale opportunities, unused resources. You can take that, all of those, reallocate your precious IT dollars towards things you need, like, well, maybe I would suggest investing in US Cloud's Microsoft support. That's what a few other US Cloud customers do. And the savings just keep on coming because you're going to completely eliminate your unified spend. I'll give you a great testimonial from Sam. He's the technical operations manager at Bede Gaming, Bede. He gave US Cloud 5 stars, most you can get, saying, quote, this is a direct quote, "We found some things that have been running for 3 years, which no one was checking. Those VMs were, I don't know, 10 grand a month. Not a massive chunk in the grand scheme of how much we spent on Azure, but once you get to $40,000 or $50,000 a month, it really starts to add up. Yeah, it's simple. Stop overpaying for Azure, identify and eliminate Azure creep, and boost your performance all in 8 weeks with US Cloud. Visit uscloud.com. Book a call today to find out how much your team can save. That's uscloud.com. Book a call today. Get faster Microsoft support for less. US Cloud. We thank him so much for supporting Windows Weekly. Now I'm going to get back to my main job, which is turning us into Minecraft characters. Well,
you got to stick to your wheelhouse there.
Yeah.
So.
I got. Yeah, I know what I'm good for. On we go with the show.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it too, and it's. I think.
Copilot. Well, I had to get the screenshot. Now I have to send it over from this computer to that computer, and it just takes a little time.
I got one. Look,
that's pretty great.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Oh, but you're not sharing it with the class.
Well, I don't know how to.
Put it in the Discord.
Oh, there you go.
We can all see it.
Get it into the Discord.
You look like a 70s Unix programmer.
Totally.
I look like Steve. That's who I want to look like.
That's so weird. Oh my God.
All right, I've got the screenshot. Now I have it on a Mac. Now to get it into Windows, step 2.
Yeah, I'll put it. Here we go.
Step 3. Let's see. It's in the Discord. I can pull it up.
Yep.
He did.
That's good. I like it.
It's funny.
So, it doesn't.
All right, but
it doesn't look Minecrafty at all. No, it looks old game-ish.
Can anyone else point out the primary advance that is occurring in this photo compared to all other AI image generation you've seen to date?
The text is still readable.
The text is readable. Yep. Exactly.
It is very readable.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yep. We are making huge headway.
This is it. A quantum leap.
AGI is
exponential.
right over the hill or whatever.
Well, now that you've done it, I don't need to do it. So I'll throw this screenshot out. Yeah, I always I love this stuff, and then I start to feel guilty. Like, am I burning down rainforests while I'm doing this?
Yeah, I find it's best just not to think about it.
Try not to think about it. All right. Moving on. Yes. Let's talk. Hey, what's the big topic today at Microsoft Build? Windows.
Well, not really, but but yeah, separate from and also concurrent with Build, there's been a bunch of stuff going on with Windows. So last November at Ignite, they announced something called the Windows Resiliency Initiative, which is part of the Secure Future Initiative, and they pulled in some stuff they're already doing, like Windows Hello ESS, but they also and VBS Enclaves, and then they announced some new stuff. And one of those new things was something called Administrative Protection, right? And which was presented at the time, possibly because it was Ignite, as a commercial-only feature, meaning for Microsoft's business customers. But actually, it's coming soon to the Windows. Well, actually, it's in the Canary. It's one of the few features in the Canary.
Wow, a Canary build is actually a Canary.
Yep. They've never updated it, but back in January, they did release it through there. It will be coming soon to dev and beta if it didn't just happen, by the way, as recently as yesterday. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
So what does it actually do?
Right. So if you think about the user account protection was like a user account control was a kind of an additional prompt. I think of it as like the middle red light on a car. You know, all of a sudden one year we just had that. It was designed to put something in front of you so you thought about what you were doing.
Right.
But this takes that to the...
Did not work.
Yeah. So what this does is basically do what I think a lot of people thought UAC was doing, which was you're basically running at a lower elevation level most of the time now, which is the way Windows
should be. Yeah.
Anyway, it creates a temporary elevation, actual account that has elevated privileges to do whatever the task is that requires that. And you technically don't have to, by the way, but let's say you have to set it up this way. You can actually turn it off later, but you use Windows Hello to authenticate yourself, right? And hopefully biometrically, but you could do a PIN, obviously. I guess if you turn it off, you'd have to type in a password, which to me would be horribly inconvenient, but they don't actually discuss that. And then as soon as the task occurs, that account is destroyed. It's just destroyed. So it's temporary. It comes and goes, and you have to authenticate. And if you think back to the primary complaint about user account control when they implemented it in Windows Vista, it was that it interrupted too much.
Yeah, it happened too often.
This is going to be way worse than that. And because I don't think people understand
you're constantly elevated.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. To me, what this reminds me of is it was Windows XP SP2, and then before that, Windows Server 2003, where they locked these things down to such a degree. The big saying in the server side was like, it's a server, not a surfboard. So like the version of IE they had in there at the time was completely denuded.
Protected mode.
Yep. Didn't do anything by default. And it's going to have that kind of a vibe to it. So,
and back in the day when I had a real job, which is a very long time ago, I had a boss who insisted on having an administrator account. So I created an account called sysadmin that had no rights at all.
I love it.
Because he never used
evil.
it. Right?
That's so evil.
I love it.
What you're actually seeing here is that's what they're doing. Sure, you have administrative privileges, but they're off. And it's only when you actually do an action that's going to utilize an administrative privilege that it's going to do something. Right?
The weirdness of this is that, a problem with this is that it's not just users that are lazy. This is just the way Windows is, right? And so app developers also don't think about this enough. Mm-hmm. So one of the problems with this is going to be apps, because apps have been written in a lazy sense too. They just assume you're going to have elevated privileges. Yep. And so the reason they're talking about this now is it's coming very soon is the phrase, which I take to mean 25H2, by the way. But they want app developers to take note of this and try to run as little of the app as possible in elevated privilege mode or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the hope is that anyone will actually pay attention to this. No one will. But
where it's going to happen is on developers, because that's going to apply to them too.
That's right. Well, this was a Windows developer blog post.
One of the first things you find out is Visual Studio's got a real problem with not having full super user privileges.
So I could be wrong, but I think that's exactly the example they use. They're like, this thing is screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then that's what's going to happen. I've done this before where I've had reduced privileges for a developer, and it's like nothing works.
So if you're a developer and you've ever tried to do like a Windows App SDK app, whatever, you actually have to turn developer mode on for this to even work. And I'm wondering now if they're not going to do something like that for look, we realize you're a developer, you're going to screw everything up. So we'll give you the opportunity.
We'll give a workaround, which just means that you will continue to build software that needs super user.
100%.
All the time.
That's exactly what it means. Yeah, exactly.
And we're back to the same problem.
So okay, so there's that. And then we've had a series of Windows.
What? Updates to Windows?
Windows Insider Preview releases. Maybe the most notable one, because this points to next month's, where are we in the calendar? Actually, this month's preview update, probably next Tuesday, and then next month's Patch Tuesday, is a release preview channel build of Windows 11 24H2. And so this is a preview we're going to see in, where are we now? June, right?
Yeah. Now that it's just about 25 and 25H2, it's a perfect time.
I should say, tied to this, the next thing we're going to talk about is, we've been doing the same builds in dev and beta channel. This is where where am I at? Yeah, this is where beta channel no longer gets new 23H2 build. So if you were stuck on if you chose to be on 23H2, did not go forward to 24H2, now you're getting it. So there's no more 23H2.
Only have one?
In beta.
This can't persist. There must be another. I can't imagine what it would be called.
Yeah, speculation.
One could speculate.
What's the number after 4? We'll see. So, it's in the scope of this past month's Patch Tuesday update, which was humongous. It's not as big, but new text actions for click to do. You're going to see that stuff come to AMD and Intel-based Copilot Plus PCs, which is great. Image descriptions and narrative. A lot of stuff is it's going to be familiar. We've heard of this, like the semantic search stuff, which they're technically not calling it anymore. The ability to, not to remap. We already have the ability to remap the Copilot key to a limited degree, but they're bringing back the Windows key plus C shortcut. I'm seeing if that works on my computer. Yeah, I still don't have that. That's curious. And whatever. Most of this stuff is not particularly interesting, but not a huge one. But just again, kind of refining a lot of the AI stuff that we've been talking about. And then a little further out is, and this is tied to what we talked about earlier. Dev and beta 24H2 is these new AI actions submenu in File Explorer. So if you were to right click on an image in 24H2, you would see actions in that primary menu related to the 2 apps that support that. But now there are going to be multiple apps, so they're going to do a submenu, and we're seeing the beginning of that, plus additional actions related to Photos and Paint for images and Notepad for now. But eventually you're going to see that for Word and Excel and, third party and whatever. So if you have Adobe Photoshop, you'll probably see it in there for that eventually. Advanced Settings is a new page in the Settings app that is also tied to DevHome being deprecated. These are a lot of the settings that you could do easily through DevHome. Now you're going to be able to do them through the Settings app. And this is primarily developer related. And one of the features that you can add, I believe this is already there, it's in DevHome, is the ability to map a GitHub repository to the file system, and then when you're viewing that, have commands related to, committing and pulling and pull requests, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool for developers, I think. And the rest of this is
that's the way one of the other source control systems used to work. Is it Turtle, something like that? But it was
interesting.
It was just
right
files
in the file
on your
system.
machine. Yeah,
I love that.
System.
I mean, right now, for example, if you go into Visual Studio and grab a GitHub repository, obviously it's going to put it somewhere locally and then, sync, right? And
Darren
I do that with
says Tortoise SVN.
Tortoise SVN, yeah. You're right, Darren, exactly.
Yeah, so the thing you don't get, so you get a replication of it in the file system, but there's no UI in there, right, for you. And so I do all that stuff from the command line now, which is fine if you know what you're doing, but having a UI is, there's common sense. It's good.
Especially when the UI is just the file system. It's pretty painless.
Yep. Good stuff. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then there was a 23H2 release preview build as well, which is, again, they're lining up the stuff. So it's features we had seen before, like that drag tray feature.
Getting ready for the end.
Yeah. And then also Windows 10 has a release preview build. And I believe this is a big one, folks. We're going to get the seconds display back in the clock.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Yeah, I know.
We're out of good ideas. Let's try some bad ideas.
Yep.
And then we get another version when we put it back.
Richard, I
always used it because if it that way I knew if my machine was hung.
There you go.
Right,
the seconds are ticking. You can't wait a minute. That's crazy. So
right.
I want everyone to take a gander at his computer. This is a Surface Laptop Studio 2.
Yeah.
Dead. They've killed it.
All the laptops.
They killed it? You killed it?
Yeah, it was dead.
Wait for it to burst into flames because I'd like a new one anyway.
Now this is I
spent a lot on this machine and it's not been great.
Yeah. So my expectation is my hope maybe is we could see a Surface laptop that has the AMD chip, the new one, the Ryzen 9, whatever it's called, HX, whatever which is like having a GPU. It's like incredible. Like they're incredible. And I think this would solve this problem, like the need here.
I've been trying to look at Ryzen 9s on a motherboard to build a PC because I'd still like to build a PC.
Right.
And it's hard to find. It's just tough. And again, it's like, is there a way to sneak in a Copilot Plus PC hand-built and a desktop chassis? No joy so far. I haven't had that much time to work on it, but it's a problem.
This little laptop I have here is just Lunar Lake. It's fine, whatever. But there's the next one that I'll review is a AMD Ryzen 9, whatever. You know, it's a little thicker battery life, but battery life is like 8 hours. You know, the performance is nuts. I could play
hand down here, like right there.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it
warped the case on my phone.
It's crazy.
It's so hot.
My hands are a little cold. I might actually.
Yeah, no, you can warm up on this. I'll fire up a video game, and this thing will properly cook the table.
This integrated graphics set they have with the 2880 by whatever the number is at full res, every feature turned on, high quality graphics, runs at like 80 frames a second in Call of Duty. It's nuts.
It's a monster.
So this is going to be, that's to me is a game changer. Like I think that's going to be humongous. But yeah, they apparently look. Microsoft has kind of settled on these two devices, laptop and Pro. They have a range of models now. I mean, anything could change, but I think the big thing is going to be that we, on the business side, I think it's only business. They offer Intel versions of both of those still. They have had AMD for laptop. I'm just saying. So, like, I look. A Lunar Lake is not going to solve this problem.
I'm ready to move off of Surface. I think they've you know,
they screwed.
I miss Penos. They also killed the studio.
I love that. That's
not
where
pumped anymore.
That's why you're thinking
the air has gone out.
They've also killed the studio desktop machine.
Yes,
right?
of course.
That's
it's
sad.
still on the
I
site. It's just out of stock.
Yep,
always.
Yep.
So that whole line is done. And this is one of them. Because this one's got the trick, right? You can pop the screen out and.
How often do you do that a lot?
Only when I show it to you.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. This is a minor thing, but a couple of months back, Microsoft announced companion apps for Microsoft 365 commercial customers using Windows 7. So these are little kind of flyout apps like file search and people, like the contacts management. Now they have, or they will soon have one for calendar as well. And because you can never have too many calendars in your computer, I guess I'm not really sure what the point is.
They're trying to kill those things. Now they're bringing it back.
I know. Well, this is the nature of Windows. It's like pile it on, pull back. Pile it on, pull back. This one's a couple of years old, but Microsoft has gotten in trouble in the EU for a couple of things, but one of them is Teams bundling in Office or Microsoft.
This is the one where the EU said they were unhappy, wouldn't offer remediation. They just like do something.
That's exactly what it is.
And then when they did something, it says that's not good enough.
That's exactly right. So there's a little more new, right? So it's like they went to the extreme step of removing Teams from Office, or at least making a version without it. They took the additional step of doing that worldwide, and the EU was like, yeah, that's not good enough. Like, what is good enough? Yeah, well,
we don't know.
Let's try something else. So I guess since then they have in fact been working together.
Oh, nice.
So Microsoft was like, look, we made this proposal. They've accepted it, but now the EU has put it out for comment to the public, meaning Slack, to see what the complaint is, right? If there is one. And I have a feeling this one's going to pass. So they lowered the price further on the version of Office or Microsoft 365 that does not have Teams.
Right.
They've agreed. This is very similar to the EU Microsoft antitrust case from 20 years ago. They're going to increase the interoperability. I believe they're just going to have APIs for Microsoft 365. So the Teams-like functions can be integrated with a third-party app, Slack. And then they were already going to do this, but they've formally acknowledged or agreed they will allow customers to move their data out of Teams so they can then put it into a third-party process. Slack.
Yeah.
Meeting Slack, 100% Slack. So
it's important to remember that Slack is owned by Salesforce, right?
Yep. But this is like AOL at the time owning Netscape, because this started before that,
right?
And then they continued it.
Then it suddenly landed in a company with a lot of money.
Yep, and it's like, you kind of killed your argument, didn't you?
Yeah.
So we'll see. But the other one, and this is very similar to the other problem Microsoft has in Europe right now with antitrust, which is the cloud licensing stuff. And one of the, what do they call them? Like exit fees. Like one of the big problems is the big cloud players, to prevent customers from migrating, would make it expensive to move off.
Export, yeah.
Right. So they got rid of that. So now
I thought that was a good move on the EU. It's like part.
Yeah.
Right. That's proper competitive behavior.
Exactly. Especially in the EU where like the big players, that's one thing, but there are a bunch of small players in the cloud space in the EU that, like in the United States, we've never heard of these companies, but they can't compete. Like you're like, oh, listen, we have all these advantages over, whatever it is, Microsoft 365 hosting. Like, okay, but you don't understand like how much it's going to cost just to get the data out of there. It does, it makes it untenable. So they're doing the same thing on the client side. Although again, I don't know this is ever a restriction, but you can customers can switch between versions of Office. Like, so if you're doing Teams, you're like, I don't want to do Teams. I'm going to pull the data out of there. Microsoft will allow that and not charge you extra for it. They were never going to, but put it into Slack. And now I can switch my subscription over for whatever users to a comparable version of the suite, the service, whatever, that doesn't have Teams with no, qualifications, right? Yep. It's just kind of common sense. This looks to me kind of like what they did do a year ago, but I think this time it's actually I think it's going to work. And my speculation, I think it was last summer, was that when the EU kind of came back and said, yeah, no, you got to fix this. And it's like, well, you didn't tell me to do anything extra here. Yeah. I feel like it was just the price. Like, so whatever the cost was per user.
It was like $2 less.
And it was like, that's not enough because when you add, this is like the Apple, it's not this extreme, but when you add the cost of Teamsless Microsoft 365 plus Slack, it's more than the cost of just Microsoft 365. So it was like, well, who would do that?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, some customers would because they have to use Slack because of whatever their customers, partners, whatever, use it. But they're just kind of streamlining that process. So that seems good to me.
Cool.
Let's take a little break because guess what? Oh, we're so excited. The Xbox segment is just around the corner. You're watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, surrounded by crazed developers at the Build
Very
Conference.
excited GitHub people.
People like free things, man. They are so cheap.
They must have broken out the T-shirt cannon. That's all I can say. There's some real excitement happening.
I'm going over there after here. I want to see what's going on. I don't know.
It's custom-made Octocats.
I want that. That sounds great. 3D printed Octocats.
It's very cute.
I turned the Renaissance picture into a Minecraft picture.
Here we go.
That actually worked pretty well.
So we're doing like this is the AI version of the telephone game.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
we
eventually just up 1 pixel each.
Right, right.
I like a set of gray pixels.
I like the background, by the way.
Yeah.
I asked it to put us in a field.
I feel like I'm getting older in every version of this.
You are. I don't know. It doesn't look like you at all. I think I'm pretty well rendered. However, I think that was a good job on my part.
Funny.
Anyway, on we go with the show. It's time for the Xbox after that Minecraft moment. Time for the Xbox segment. Paul, give us some good news.
I know there's a lot. I'm going to try to burn through this quick. By the way, I wanted just to acknowledge Kevin Brewer. If you're in Discord, you know this already, but if you're not, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But when we do the show, he takes the show notes and he posts a link to whatever we're about to talk about. And I can't imagine how fragile he is right now because the show has been a complete
we've been
disaster.
all over the place.
He does a good job, though, Kev.
Yeah, he does.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Kev. And I'm sorry for for the way this has gone down.
This is another reason to be in the club, by the way, because then you can sit in the Discord and you get the links.
Yeah.
In fact, Kevin King uploads the show notes ahead of time, so you can even get those ahead of time.
Which we've promptly modified.
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Okay, so it's a big week in games. Without getting into the nitty gritty on this one, Epic Games got their case against Apple, submitted Fortnite, and then Apple didn't do anything. And then the time frame for it expired, and they were like, okay, they're blocking us. They complained to the judge. Apple's like, we didn't do anything. And then the judge had another rip-roaring legal filing. It was the best. And it basically what it said was, you can solve this problem without me getting involved. If the court's intervention is required, the Apple official who is responsible for ensuring compliance will appear personally in the hearing on May 27th, and any opposition brief will be filed by whatever date, and will identify that person by name.
Wow.
So we can
I'm ready to put people in jail.
Yep. And it's like, oh, wait, we approved it. Apple is, oh my God. So if you have
a malicious compliance thing, it's going to burn them.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can get Fortnite again. It's just like we're going to party like it's 2020. So that's fun.
I can just stay home.
Microsoft filed a legal filing in this case to explain that they have had a similar problem with Apple, that they have submitted. They want to do the store where they can do game streaming, et cetera. And Apple keeps saying no. And they're like, you're required to allow us to do this. This is part of that ruling.
Right.
And so we'll see what comes of this. But
malicious compliance.
Yep, they're terrible at everybody. They're pretty consistent. So there's that. There was a job listing on Qualcomm.com, which I'm sure is now gone, but it specifically mentioned that they're looking for an applicant who can help with the next generation of Surface and Xbox products built on Snapdragon.
Excellent. So that is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we've been speculating about this for a long time, and I can't say this completely confirms it. I mean, we don't know what that means exactly. It could just be a handheld thing. It might not be everything, but we know from the leak from a couple of years back that Microsoft wanted to make the next-gen consoles based on ARM, and a lot of things have to happen, as we've been saying, but
not the least the devs, but yeah.
Yep. So it's really interesting.
You kind of need Windows on ARM to even approach, the Xbox 360, because it was the custom hardware. It made lives for game developers really hard, and it substantially slowed down game development.
Yep.
It raised the prices on everything. It was a mistake in the end.
So this week is also Computex, and rather than take another half an hour to talk about all the developments that are occurring there, I'll just mention one of them, which is that Dell has announced this week a workstation that has, I don't remember if it was AMD or Intel, but whatever processor, NVIDIA dedicated graphics of whatever variant, and the Snapdragon X MPU in a single computer. So there's an interesting mixing and matching occurring there.
Wow, that's wild.
They went to these companies because they said, they were like, look, we need this internally for AI development. It's kind of a weird ask, but is there some way we can do this? And I don't know which party required this, but one of the three companies said, yeah, you can do this, but you need to sell this computer to the public as well. And so it's going to be very expensive. I believe it's about $3,000 or whatever, but and it's kind of a one-off. I don't, no one expects this to be like a volume seller or whatever, but this is the thing, one of the things we've been kind of thinking about and talking about with Snapdragon or just Windows 11 on ARM, which is, for all the reasons everyone knows, great, especially for thin and light laptops. But what about dedicated graphics? This is something Apple doesn't.
Well, what about dedicated MPU? Give me an MPU and a PCIe slot.
Yep. So this is very interesting, right? This is like and maybe this points to a solution. I mean, I did talk to Qualcomm recently. They acknowledged competitors were coming to this market soon, meaning Windows 11 on ARM. But there's indications. They're not even rumors. It's just like more than rumors that Microsoft wants to, in some way, it's not clear they know how, combine the Xbox and Windows gaming worlds into a single platform of some kind. And that makes ARM
would make sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
So again, lots of things have to happen, but this job listing points to that seems to be happening.
Somebody's working on it.
No one is saying anything Qualcomm plus NVIDIA in this context, but there is Qualcomm plus NVIDIA on that computer I just mentioned, and
if you can carve the N100 off, you can stick it on a card, stick it in my machine, and boom, I'm a Copilot Plus PC.
Oh my God, that's
pretty much. I mean, we still got to do the camera stuff and things So there might be certain monitors I have to have that have the proper camera on it. I could see that, or the right module. I mean, but we should be able to build Copilot Plus PCs.
Look, Copilot Plus PC is just a spec. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It's just a spec that this
could change, and
that you can't order.
You as a Copilot Plus PC buyer could turn off Windows Hello ESS in the sense that you could just connect an external webcam that will never be compliant.
Right.
And it still works fine. Like you don't lose any functionality.
But there's another product to sell there. Give me a Hello ESS module that plugs into USB-C and it sits on top of my screen.
It's just the problem is there's an interception capability there. You know, this is what they're worried about. But yes, fair enough. So that's very interesting. There is right now a gigantic Xbox monthly update that is going on across platforms. Meaning console, obviously, but also PC and mobile. And there's a bunch of stuff to it. This just happened before the show, so I've only looked at this at a very high level because I just didn't have a lot of time. But one of the things that's in here is a retro gaming anthology that's of Activision games, classic, built in, or from the 80s and 90s, available to anyone on Game Pass from console, PC, and Xbox cloud gaming. Right now, it's not available for purchase separately, which, as Laurent writes in our article, I think is a first. We've seen these kind of retro gaming anthologies over the years in various forms, right? On CD in the 1990s and then, digital elsewhere. But 50 plus classic Activision games, Commando, Grand Prix, Kaboom, like from the original, Atari 2600, Pitfall, et cetera, et cetera. So that's cool. There is GeForce Now integration in the Xbox app, on Windows. So today, if you have an Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate subscription, you get Xbox Cloud Gaming. Got to really work through these names,
right?
And that means you can stream, obviously. But if you have a GeForce Now, whatever games you have through there, you'll be able to stream through the Xbox app as well. It's cool, and I think this points to that future we've talked about every once in a while, where Microsoft wants the Xbox app on Windows, which is the Xbox app interface essentially on console, but on the PC side, to be the front end for all of the game that you do. And this is one step, but the next step, which is rumored to be happening this year, is integration with Steam and the Epic Game Store.
Nice.
Right. So you have those accounts, you link them up with your Xbox account, you get everything through.
All the stores go through it.
Yep. Yeah. So this is cool to me. So we'll see how that goes down. And then I already did that. For some reason, I have the same link on all these articles. Okay, so I've screwed up the notes. That's amazing. It hasn't happened more often. There's other stuff. If you use the game bar in Windows, which I actually do pretty extensively, there's a big UI update there, which looks pretty cool. Updates to Edge Game Assist, which is that in UI mini browser thing where you can get help with the game side by side, et cetera, which is cool. There's all that stuff. Custom Xbox, gift cards, meaning custom amounts. Like you could buy them in whatever amounts, but now if you
10, 25, 100.
Yeah. So, but if you know what a game costs, like with the tax, you could be like, here's your gift card for $32.97 or whatever, and it's the exact cost of the thing. Right. You could do that. One of the better games that I played last year, meaning one of the few games that was not called Call of Duty that I played last year, was Hellblade 2, right? Which is kind of an interactive adventure action game, kind of Viking era, whatever. Great graphics, good story. There's like a weird mental health component to it. That's part of it. Is the latest Xbox game coming to the PlayStation 5. So that will delight everyone in Xbox because we're so open to that. It's fine. Second half of the month, so we're getting a new collection of Xbox Game Pass games, including, by the way, that Hellblade 2 title is one of several. So Tom Clancy's The Division 2 is in there. Spray Paint Simulator, because seriously. Stalker 2, right? Coming to Game Pass Standard on May 22. That's great. That's your day one difference. So whenever that game came out, it was the biggest thing in the world, probably late last year, I guess, November probably. You'll be getting it on Standard, which is the replacement for the old Xbox Game Pass, the one that everyone wanted, right?
It's a pretty good game list. It's better than we've had.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So yeah,
by that I mean 2 titles, I reckon.
I mean, you actually exactly. The Division 2.
Maybe 3.
Well, yeah, Hellblade 2, Stalker 2, and Tim Clancy's The Division 2.
Yeah.
And then of course,
it's a massive online game.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. This is a good one. Yeah. So yeah. So kind of a big month. Am I missing anything? I think that's
That's it. That's the Xbox segment, boys and girls.
Coming in. We're going to make it.
We're going to land it.
Hope you enjoyed that. We're getting to the back of the book, actually, just around the corner. But first, I'd like to tell you about Club Twit. It's only $7 a month, but it won't be that price for much longer. So if you are a Club Twit member, hang on to your membership, because you'll still have the founder price of $7 a month, $84 a year. New kids will be joining. Will have to pay a little bit more. So, and if you join today, you can still get the founder pricing. So twit.tv/clubtwit. I think $7 is an amazing deal for what you get. Ad-free versions of all the shows, access to the Club Twit Discord. And there's a lot more going on in the Discord than just chat about the shows. Of course, that happens. Many of our hosts join the Discord, participate. That's cool. There's sections for everything geeks are interested in, from gaming to photography and more. So, it's a really nice social network. We also do shows in the Club Twit Discord. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our keynotes now are all Club Twit only. So we did the Microsoft Build keynote on Monday, the Google I.O. keynote on Tuesday. WWDC is coming up June 9th. Those will all be, for copyright reasons, those will all be in the Discord only. Coming up this Friday, Dick T. Bartolo's going to stop by. We'll celebrate 2,000 episodes of the GizWiz, and I'm going to break out some of the old jingles and show episodes and things. We have our AI user group coming up first Friday of every month. That was great last month. Anthony Nielsen shows us how he makes those crazy moral panic interstitials. WWDC June 9th. And as you can see, we do a lot of shows in the club, so you can watch live there. And Photo Time with Chris Marquardt, June 13th, 1 p.m. Pacific. And Wednesday, June 18th, 6 p.m. Pacific, the return of Micah's Crafting Corner. We had a lot of fun last week with the Crafting Corner. Joining the club is more than just supporting what we do, but that's a big part of it. 25% now of our operating costs get paid by the club members. Thank you. We couldn't do it without you, but you get a lot of benefits too. twit.tv/club twit. Get in there now to get the founder pricing, and we thank you so much for your support. Now time for the back of the book. Paul Thurrott kicks it off with his tip of the week. Paul?
The club is killing it. The club is just killing it.
I'm so distracted.
Is there stuff in the Discord with these?
So good.
Yeah,
they're going to town.
So good.
Oh, I love this. Yeah, Joe Esposito does these. Have you ever contributed? This one of my Tom Selleck in this. Have you ever contributed to keeping a network of shows alive and growing for the?
I gotta go. TC has arrived in the helicopter.
Darren Oakley had a couple of killers too. It's just so funny.
Darren's done some good stuff too. Look at this. He made that's Paul did this one. This is a LAN party. Mm-hmm. They're sitting around as the TV screen and the. There's a lot of good stuff. I guess
going back a little farther,
even farther.
It gets weird.
Yeah. Oh, this, by the way, I figured out what this is. This is the Notebook LM version of the show.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Strangely bizarre versions of the three of us.
Not quite versions of us.
Yeah. Somebody says, what they say, it's Ray Romano. I love this. Gordon Freeman and Jay Leno.
The thing is, right, I recognize each one of those people.
Yeah.
But they're not us.
But they're not us. Not quite.
There's almost a Jerry Seinfeld there on the left.
Yeah.
But Ray Romano. There's a great uncanny valley moment in this.
Well, what Darren did is he had older pictures of the three of us, which he said I was trying to get a younger version of this.
Right.
So that's
what my wife's is trying too. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, right.
Trying to get. I like this, but I like a younger version.
A little younger, please.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's your tip of the week, my friend?
So I do not have a tip, but I have an app pick and a game pick.
Okay.
One of the many things Microsoft announced this week, and I don't quite understand why they're doing this, but is a command line editor called Edit, which is available now for free on GitHub. You can get it for Windows or Linux, and part of the reason is you would install this in WSL or the command line.
This is the 50-year anniversary gag, is what this is.
Oh, is it a gag? Oh,
no, it's not a gag. It's real. It's actually,
but it's for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like
it's an MS-DOS roll flashback.
Yeah, it works. Like it's pretty good.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
It's a TUI editor or is it a GUI editor that looks like a TUI?
So remember the DOS editor UIs from like Quick Basic or whatever. It's full screen with menu system. That's
what they do.
It does keyboard shortcuts. Control O, and you can navigate through the file system. It works well.
It says it's an homage to the classic MS-DOS editor.
Yeah,
totally.
Wow.
Yeah, the 50th anniversary thing.
Right. So that'll be my next app. I'm going to do a DOS version of the .NET Pad. Yeah.
And it's written in Rust, so it's going to be very reliable.
Yeah. That's right.
Chances of this editor crashing low.
I noticed this app doesn't have tabs. That's genius.
Hysterical. That's hysterical.
My game pick is something I was hoping to play more of, but of course now I'm here and I can't really. It's weird. I haven't had a lot of time to play games this week.
Weird.
But Doom: The Dark Ages is out, and
Classic.
It's fantastic. Like it's really good, and it's. Well, I've heard so many people describe this as like a throwback to the. It has nothing to do with any of the Doom games. It has nothing to like. Supposedly this is like a trilogy they've done, but the recent Doom's 2016, Doom Eternal, and Doom: The Dark Age is like part of it. They're not. It has nothing to do with any of it. Like it's a. If anything, it's further from the roots of the original Doom as unnamed space marine. The portals of hell have opened up, etc. But it's really well. It's really well done. It's a beautiful game. I will say, compared to Call of Duty, the primary download size of this game is smaller than the typical monthly update to Call of Duty. Like it installs really quick. It's a great game. It's single player, right? So you can go do that. That part of it is very similar to Doom. So I it's bugging me because I think if I had been home, I might have finished it by now, but I haven't really been able to play since I've been here. So I installed it on this laptop. I was like, yeah, you never know. Like, you do know. It's not happening.
It does have some of the similar creatures. I mean, there's the Doom guy.
Oh,
but it's done with Unreal Engine or something.
It's like one of those time travel things. Like you're in some not Renaissance.
It's got the BFG, baby.
Yeah,
oh my!
Of course it does. Yeah,
it's well done. The mechanics are great. There's some new elements to it. Like a lot of it is like you have a shield and you can block, but also attack with it, and it's a big part of it. Like, so a lot of people are like, this is about, like, they call it parry, like parry mode or whatever. But like what he just did right there, where you attack with the shield.
Yeah.
Very effective. It's just great. It just runs great. Like it's really,
it looks like
really
so much fun.
Yeah,
oh my gosh. Yeah. And you're killing
feels
aliens,
a little bit like
so
Serious Sam or something. If you remember those games from back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right. This does not look like Doom.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah,
but it's as if you took Doom and
got a Warhammer 40,000 feel.
Yeah, maybe
to
a little. Yeah,
a little bit of that
recognizable Doom elements,
armor kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Here comes Doom. Here comes Runner's Radio. Who's you're going to do that PowerShell thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I already mentioned this because we happen to talk about DSC and a bunch of others, but my friend Jason Helmick, who is one of the great PowerShell gurus before he joined Microsoft, then he went into the PowerShell team as well. Finally got a chance to talk to him directly about the latest version of PowerShell, which is 7.5.
Nice.
And we talked a bit about the cadence because he's very much on the PM side of things. PowerShell is open source, and so there are community contributors. And so they tend to alternate between a release version that is heavily focused on the contributor contributions, where they've made sure they validate them all so these can stay in. And then the following version, in this case it'll be 7.6, is what they call the long-term support edition. And that one tends to synchronize with the new version of .NET. So this is
November.
So springtime we release the 0.5, which is the the community edition, and then the 0.6 will come out in November with .NET 10. Okay. And then that's supported for 3 years, which is how long .NET 10 will be supported.
Maybe they could sync up the version number.
Yeah, now you're just talking crazy talk, honestly.
That was I don't even want
and adjacent to that was DSC 3, so that's desired state configuration. And it's really
I misread it. I thought it was DOS 3. I was so
nice. No, that was DOS 3.
That's a real throwback. Holy man.
That's funny.
And so desired state configuration is about maintaining the configuration of a machine. I originally used this back in the early days for maintaining a set of web servers that were in a cluster, because often you have these drifts. Things happen to these machines and their configuration is not the same, so they misbehave. And DSC was really good at making sure all of its versions were synced.
It's incredible to me that this term's been around in the Microsoft space for like 25 years.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy that
I've thought about DSC on and off on Run-As for more than a decade, easy.
Yep.
And so now they're up to version 3. I mean, a couple of important parts. One is it's fully cross-platform, so you can use DSC on Linux to maintain configuration now as well.
What does DSC stand for?
Desired state configuration.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is it's a YAML-based configuration file, and you specify the configuration. Well, you're saying for the system, but also for individual apps.
For software configurations as well.
And I mean, you want every time you bring this thing up, you want to make sure it's configured exactly the way you want it.
And so it's a way to deploy new machines. It's a way to maintain machines. To say it has this thing drifted is the term we use when the configurations have been altered by other.
This is what I want for my Windows 11 customization utility. Like you set the configuration. You like to make sure it's always like this.
So every time you boot up, rerun the configurator, make sure we're correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, and Jason's one of the gods, like his photo on Twitter is a picture of him with Manasseh and Rasinovich and Snover, like he's been in that loop and part of that PowerShell culture since the very beginning.
Snover being
I want to go to that dinner party.
He's literally the inventor of PowerShell. So
I just told a story about him yesterday to Rick Klaus about how at Ignite 2019, I found him wandering around in the convention center. I'm like, "You all right?" He goes, "I have no idea where our booth is. I got to speak there in 2 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, I just came back and bring you over." So I brought him over there, and I was like, "I found this homeless guy wandering around. He said he was with you. I don't know."
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's great to talk to Jason. I mean, he crossed over. He became a blue badge, joined the company, and so forth. And is now working on the product.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Been an advocate for forever. So I love everything about that, and he's clearly having a great time.
Nice.
Oh, man, we made it to the best part of the show. It's time for some brown liquor.
What do you got? Dipped into the weird list today to go back to Scotland to talk about Tamnavulin. Now, actually, before I can talk about that, I have to talk about Glenlivet. Now, we're not going to talk about Glenlivet, the whiskey, because I actually mentioned Nadura more than 100 shows ago. 812 was when I mentioned Nadura. Glenlivet is actually an important phrase. I mean, nominally it means the valley of the river, right? But that would be specifically the Livet River. But it was also the term used when whiskey was illegal in Scotland, like in the 1700s. Glenlivet meant the region where you got illicit whiskey. And this is in the north center of what we eventually call Speyside, on the north side of the Cairngorms. But it was that back then, Glenlivet literally meant illicit whiskey. And this is where you got it from.
I love that.
And so when regulation comes to whiskey, when they actually, okay, here's how we're going to tax it and so forth, in 1823, right away a distillery is announced. It was already there. And they call it, that's in 1824. And what did they call it? They called it Glenlivet. Right? That's where it comes from. And remained the only distillery on the River Livet until 1966.
Wow.
Thanks.
So even though in Speyside only becomes, even though they started using that term, like it only became an official term in 2009, right? Like we take all these things for granted, but then a lot of them are more recent than you realize. And Glenlivet were also guys who popularized the concept of a single malt. Like a lot of these things come from that part of the world. And the River Livet is not it's one of the smaller rivers. It does feed into the Avon River, which then moves down towards the north. And you have the famous Bridge of Avon, which was built in the early 1800s. And that's where Ballinadaloch is, which we've talked about before, and Cragganmore. And then that continues on into the Spey River. And then there's lots of distilleries around the Spey River before you ultimately end up in the North Sea. So Invergordon Distilleries, which is not in the Spey, it's in the northeast part of the Highlands, and it's actually a grain distillery, owned a set of distilleries back in the early days, including Bruichladdich and Tullibardine and Jura, which we talked about just a couple of weeks ago. I love that you just
rattled us right up. Okay.
Yes. And so in 1966, when whiskey's doing extremely well and they need more capacity, they build this new distillery on the River Livet called Tamnavulin, near the town of Tamnavulin. And so it's all for blending. Although they did a little bit of single malt in the early days, and they had a little visitor center in the 1990s, which is all closed now. In fact, if you get a picture currently of the Tamnavulin distillery, where it used to have the sign that says Tamnavulin, it now says no visitors. Now, everything changes in 1993 when White and Mackay, again, when I talked about Jura, we talked about White and Mackay, buys the Invergordon distiller. So that's the grain distillery along with the other single malt distilleries. And they actually, because business is slowing down, shut down Tamnavulin. They just mothball it because the demand's not that high. And this is not a well-known brand, so it's an easy one to shut down. And then when United Spirits buys them, they reopen, and that's in 2007, and starts to run it again. There's a famous controversy around this distillery and specifically United Spirits, because in 2013, Diageo started buying shares of United Spirits to do a hostile takeover. And the Scottish government intervened and said, yes, you can buy United Spirits, but you can't buy any of the distilleries.
Oh, interesting.
And so they already own the shares, and now they tanked the value on them, so they had to finish the buy, but they ended up selling off White and Mackay to Emperador, which I mentioned last time we were talking about Jura, which is this liquor conglomerate out of the Philippines. But that's how that went down in 2014. It was because the Scottish government intervened in a Diageo hostile takeover. So, and only in 2016 I'm
sorry to interrupt. You don't have this with you.
Which, the whiskey?
You do this every week. Every week you have whiskey with you.
I can't get it.
I'm here.
They're searching all the bags. I can't get it in.
What the hell's wrong with you?
I'm sorry.
You can't get whiskey
really
in?
Sorry. No, they're searching all the bags.
You should have done this in the hotel room then. I'm
next to you and you don't have the...
No, I'm only when I'm beside Leota I bring the whiskey. That's how this works. I'll get you a drink later. And by the way, good luck finding this.
Yeah. Do you have some in the hotel?
Wine. I have whiskey in the hotel, but not this.
Not Tamnavulin.
No, Tamnavulin is hard to come by.
We get something that is as described here, is very similar. I bet.
It's a sherry cask space side. You kind of can't go wrong.
It's like a Scotch that has been kind of calmed down with some bourbon.
Yeah, it's always started in bourbon barrels, right?
Yep.
Totally normal.
And then made even better with sherry cask.
And then you finish like 9 months in a sherry cask.
No, this is, to me, is the ideal.
This is classic Spey, 100%. And this is what's interesting is that with this distillery is in 2016, after all the shuffling's done, and Emperor Dora kind of goes, well, what are we going to do with this? Right? Because they don't need the blending capacity, although they are still using it. Like there's still black and white, which White McKay makes. Like there's a bunch of blending whiskeys that they are using. That's the main thing that Tamavul. These guys put up 4 million liters a year, and you haven't heard of them.
Right.
It's not, but because almost all their whiskey goes into blends, but they did start a line of single malts nominally. This sherry cask is only for 2019. It's relatively new.
Is it only primarily UK based?
Primarily UK, but I did find it on Total Wine for $40.
That's incredible.
It's not expensive.
Yeah.
Right. But again, because they're not branding at all. They're not spending the marketing money. Whiskey is not expensive to make.
Right.
It just isn't. And the barrel, the most interesting thing about this distillery, if you actually go study it, is it has massive rack houses. Instead of long, low rack houses covering the hills, because it's so steep in the valley on the Livet River.
They just go up.
They've got 10 barrels high. Very tall, 40,000 barrels they can store. And it's not just Tamnavulin. They store for a bunch of the other distilleries that are owned by White and McKay, or really Emperor Dora now. Right. And so it's a good aging space because it's very cool there, down in the low part of the valley. It's an excellent place to age a whiskey, but it's not big. So they build these tall rack houses, and that's how they store their whiskey there. And so, again, the vast majority of this stuff you're going to find in various blends made by Emperor Dora. And the few single malts there's a couple of wine finishes, but this one is this sherry cask is a classic Spey. It is a perfect Spey. I could put a wrapper over that cover. You would never know. You wouldn't know what the heck it was. There's like 15 whiskeys from the Spey.
My favorite Scotch is literally as exactly described like this.
And again, what makes me laugh is I'll bet you if I could put a Macallan 12 beside again covered and this side by side and taste, me go they're the same. And the Macallan 12 is $150.
Yep.
And this is $35.
Right. Wow.
Right. It's a classic Spey with no branding.
Tamnavulin, sherry finished.
And you seriously don't have any with you right now.
And I don't have any with me. I'm really sorry.
He said it to me. Actually, Yarno had a good suggestion. Next time, take 2 bottles, one for security and one for Paul.
Nice. As long as you share, everybody's happy.
Share. Yeah. That's our brown liquor segment for the day. Thank you very much to Joe Esposito for the cover art.
I love this like an ad for an episode of Heart to Heart from the early 1980s.
It is. It's such a great font. It's such a great font.
I still think that's like an RCMP jacket.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, totally.
Well, they're trying to be respectful of your Canadian heritage.
It says Microsoft on that.
With the Microsoft logo on it. It's great.
It's the Microsoft security. He's in charge. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Microsoft logo too.
Yeah.
I know you have more things you'd like to be doing there than sitting in a studio doing Windows Weekly, but
we might go drink whiskey.
We appreciate it because you gave us an insight, a look into what's going on at Build this week.
Yeah.
Paul Thurrott writes and will write more about this, I'm sure, at thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. His books, Windows Everywhere, and the Field Guide for Windows 11, available at leanpub.com. It's how long you going to stay out there the whole week, Paul? When are you going back?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow, okay.
Then Friday we leave for the.
Yeah, I'm going to drive. I'm driving north tomorrow too because I fly to South Africa on Saturday.
Oh man, you guys are traveling.
Yeah.
Well, have a great trip. Richard Campbell's at runisradio.com. That's where you'll find Run Is Radio and .NET Rocks, his podcasts. And you'll find both of them here on our channel, on our network, every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. Wherever they are in the world, they're always here on Tuesday. And you should be too. You can watch it live if you're a club member in our Club Twit Discord, but also on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, X.com, and Kick. Watch the live streams, but that
to this day, I still have no idea what Kick is. I'm really confused every time you say that. I'm not even sure it exists. I think you just throw a random a word in there just to see if anyone pays.
I know them because they sponsor an F1 team. They have a lime green car, the Kick Sauber. So I've heard of them for that reason. I think they're partly owned by Stake. I don't know. And Stake's a gambling entity. They're partly owned by Catch and also Throw. Catch and throw. The big three. Yeah. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at our website, twit.tv/WW. There's audio and video. There's, of course, video on the YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. A great place to go to share clips from the show. And the best way to get it, subscribe in your favorite podcast client. You can get it automatically the minute it's available for free. Just look for Windows Weekly. And if you wish, it would be very nice if you would leave us a 5-star review, because people pay attention to those reviews. So give us a nice thumbs up, if you will. A reminder that club members and everybody should subscribe to our free newsletter at twit.tv/newsletter. Great way to keep up on what's going to happen in the days to come on Twit. So I know sometimes we surprise you. We go out of nowhere with a build keynote and that kind of thing. All of that will always be promoted in the newsletter, and that's free. twit.tv/newsletter. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Richard. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks to all of you winners and dozers for joining us, and we will see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.